Avatar Chronicles 1 The Return of the Avatar, on one of the many parallel worlds in the multiverse. Prologue. New Britannia, 40 years ago. Courage. The shattered full moon of the lunar eclipse shone bright red in the night sky above Falura Field. A lone white dove let out a mournful coo as it soared high above. Down below, tens of thousands of charred, frozen, and dismembered corpses littered the blood-stained battlefield, as healers tended to the few hundred surviving members of Lord British's army. Lord British lay on the grass, applying pressure to the deep sword wound in his side. A few feet in front of him were the shattered fragments of the amulet of Vazur, with which the evil Lord Shadow Raine had unleashed the power of 8 of the 9 legendary dragons: gold, silver, bronze, copper, red, black, white, blue, upon New Britannia. Thankfully, once the Avatar had shattered the amulet with his sword of virtue, Lord Shadow Raine lost control of the 8 dragons, and they flew back to their lairs and went to sleep. Lord British was surrounded by piles of bone dust, the remnants of Shadow Raine's powerful army of undead warriors. Lord British's attention was drawn back to the present by the loud clanging of swords. He saw the Avatar and Lord Shadow Raine locked in mortal combat in front of the celestial lunar rift. The Avatar's black and gold armour gleamed in the red moonlight.
"I was so close to summoning the celestial dragon, Ashara!"
yelled Lord Shadow Raine, an imposing figure clad in red and black armour.
"Curse you, Avatar! Lord British stole everything that should have been mine! The throne, Lady Abrera, the woman I love! Why are you helping such an evil man?"
"No, Lord Shadow Raine, you are mistaken,"
replied the Avatar.
"Lord British is a good person and a rightful ruler."
"Avatar, why are you content being Lord British's lapdog? Our nation has grown weak and pathetic under Lord British's rule. In the days of old, we were known for the courage of our knights as we expanded our empire by conquering those who opposed us. Nowadays, the other nations consider us to be a toothless tiger, more interested in making peace instead of war. Join me, and together we can bring glory back to our nation,"
said Lord Shadow Raine.
"Never. You were once a good person, but you've forsaken your virtues, and now driven by our dark desires. You are not worthy to rule over anyone,"
the Avatar shouted, as he swung his golden sword of virtue with all his might. The sword of virtue made a loud humming sound as it sliced through the air and made contact with Lord Shadow Raine's massive, unbreakable ebony blade, DarkStarr. Lord Shadow Raine's blade shattered into 100 pieces. Lord Shadow Raine dropped the broken hilt and took a step back, a startled expression on his face.
"What? This cannot be!"
he said.
"Surrender, and Lord British may show you mercy,"
said the Avatar as he pointed his sword at Lord Shadow Raine.
"Never! If I can't rule New Britannia, then I shall see it destroyed,"
bellowed Lord Shadow Raine.
"But first, I shall make you pay for ruining my plans, Avatar. Feel my power!"
He began hurling bolts of red mystic energy at the Avatar, who deflected them away with his sword. Lord Shadow Raine began glowing bright yellow as he unleashed even more powerful mystic energy bolts at the Avatar. The Avatar was slowly being pushed backward by the force of the bolts.
"Ha! You are no match for me, Avatar!"
said Lord Shadow Raine, as one of the bolts struck the Avatar in the chest. The Avatar fell to his knees, momentarily stunned. Were it not for his enchanted armour, the Avatar would have been vaporized. Lord Shadow Raine's eyes suddenly turned pitch black, and he levitated several feet upward. His body was now surrounded by a crackling globe of red mystic energy.
Now, all of you will die!
Lord Shadow Raine bellowed.
I will not let you destroy New Britannia,
said the Avatar, as he dropped his sword and hurled himself at Lord Shadow Raine. The Avatar felt agonizing pain as his flesh began to burn once he penetrated the outer surface of the energy globe and ploughed right into Lord Shadow Raine.
No!
Screamed Lord Shadow Raine as they were both propelled through the celestial lunar rift. After they passed through the lunar rift, the Avatar saw the look of anger and disappointment in Lord Shadow Raine's face as he realized that he had been defeated.
Curse you, Avatar!
Shouted Lord Shadow Raine. The Avatar simply smiled. He knew that New Britannia was safe. His work was done. Now it was time to rest. Then everything exploded in a sea of red. Lord British heard a loud explosion and saw a giant plume of red energy erupt from the lunar rift before it was sucked back in and the lunar rift collapsed in upon itself and vanished. Everyone on the battlefield stood in shocked silence. Lord British was unaware that a small golden metal fragment had been propelled out of the lunar rift just prior to its collapse and had fallen at the prophet Nystal's feet. Nystal quickly picked up the fragment and slipped it into his belt pouch before anyone could notice. Suddenly, the Avatar's sword of virtue shot up into the sky. It paused for a few moments as the 8 runes of virtue engraved in the hilt began glowing. Then, the sword suddenly vanished in a flash of light.
My liege!
Exclaimed Fire Lotus as she rushed to Lord British's side and examined his wound. Few people knew that in addition to being the city's favourite taverner, Fire Lotus was also a highly skilled healer.
You are badly wounded. Let me apply this healing salve and bandage your wound,
said Fire Lotus.
Thank you, old friend. The wound does not appear to be responding to my healing spell, perhaps because of the enchanted ebony blade which Lord Shadow Raine used to inflict it,
replied Lord British. Lord British sighed as Fire Lotus tended to his wound.
New Britannia has been saved, but at what cost? Thousands of my finest soldiers lie dead, and our greatest champion, the Avatar, has been lost, he said.
This is a sad day indeed for all of New Britannia, my liege,
replied Fire Lotus.
But your men showed great courage in the face of insurmountable odds, and their sacrifices were not in vain. This terrible year-long ordeal is finally over, and we can finally begin to rebuild that which was lost.
The tall, slender, white-bearded prophet Nystal walked over to Lord British and Fire Lotus.
My dear Fire Lotus, you are mistaken. We may have won this battle, my lord, but the war is not over,
said Nystal.
Lord Shadow Raine was not destroyed. The ancient forbidden dark magic which now courses through his veins have made him far too powerful to be killed by conventional means. He has been seriously wounded and transported to a far-off planet in another universe. Lord Shadow Raine will return at the full head of a powerful army to conquer New Britannia in 40 years, at the time of the next lunar eclipse.
Nystal, you are truly a wise prophet, but are you certain of this?
Asked Lord British.
Yes, my lord, of this I am certain,
replied Nystal.
How will we stop Lord Shadow Raine when he returns?
Asked Lord British.
The Avatar barely managed to defeat him, at the cost of his own life.
The Avatar's physical form was destroyed by the mystical energies unleashed by Lord Shadow Raine, but his soul is eternal,
said Nystal.
It was shattered into 35,000 fragments, which were carried through the portal to your home planet, Earth. These soul fragments now reside in the most worthy of Earth's inhabitants. Over the next 40 years, these avatars will be drawn here to New Britannia and compete amongst themselves to determine who will be the one true avatar.
But will the Avatar be revealed in time to stop Lord Shadow Raine?
Asked Lord British.
Yes, I will work to ensure that happens. Until next we meet,
answered Nystal. He leered at the lovely fire lotus for a moment, before vanishing in a cloud of white smoke.
Do you think Nystal's prophecy is true, my liege?
Asked Fire Lotus.
There are rumors that he is slowly going mad, and as others have recently reported seeing him talking to himself and inanimate objects on several occasions.
No doubt he would be acting strangely, considering how much time he has been spending in your fine establishment lately. I suspect Nystal is rather fond of you,
answered Lord British.
My liege,
stammered Fire Lotus as she blushed bright red.
Nystal did warn us about Lord Shadowrain's plans, and his past prophecies have proven to be true, so I see no reason to doubt him now,
replied Lord British.
I was so happy the day my younger half-brother James arrived here in New Britannia from Earth. We were so close growing up. I cannot believe how far he has fallen. I am grateful that my mother and stepfather did not live to see this day. For now, we must make sure that the Amulet of Vazur does not fall into the wrong hands.
Lord British cast a spell, and the shattered fragments rose from the ground and flew off into the sky to various remote parts of New Britannia.
And so it begins,
said Lord British, as he gazed up into the night sky. End of prologue. I am assuming that people in New Britannia physically age at roughly 1/4 of the rate they would here on Earth. Introduction. Mount Crendor, 4 years ago. Truth. A cold Arctic wind swept through Mount Crendor as it continued to snow heavily. A solitary, short, chubby figure, clad in a tattered brown robe, staggered across the mountainside. The young monk Theodric was beginning to regret his decision to sneak out of his monastery a week ago, after receiving a vision compelling him to come here. At the monastery, Theodric was one of the 5 monks currently writing sections of the History of New Britannia, Volume 1, an important responsibility for someone so young. He had been assigned the task based upon the Grand Abbot's personal recommendation to Lord British. Suddenly, Theodric found himself standing in a lush garden next to a crystal-clear stream. His limbs no longer ached. In fact, he felt full of energy. Theodric looked down and saw that he was now clad in a comfortable white silk robe with blue trim and covered in mysterious golden runes which he could not decipher. In his right hand was a massive leather-bound book. Theodric could not decipher the writing on the cover or the content of the pages contained within. He peered into the stream and saw his face. He appeared to be at least 10 years older than he was now, complete with a full beard. Theodric also appeared to be in much better shape than he was now, with most of his excess body fat replaced with solid muscle. He heard a sound and looked up to see a lone white dove soar overhead towards the massive tree of knowledge atop a nearby hill. Theodric could see a beautiful red-haired woman in a black robe with red trim also covered in mysterious golden runes, standing beneath the tree beckoning him. He did not recognize her face. Then everything suddenly turned to white, and he found himself back on Mount Crendor. In the distance, the shining beacon of light continued to beckon, but Theodric could go no further. He had been walking for hours, and could no longer feel his limbs. Theodric collapsed from exhaustion and lost consciousness. A pack of hungry snow wolves spotted the unconscious figure and came charging out of the nearby woods. A hooded figure suddenly appeared next to Theodric's unconscious form. The hooded figure turned and looked in their direction. The snow wolves suddenly stopped in their tracks and began whimpering. They quickly turned around and ran off in the opposite direction. The hooded figure picked up Theodric and flung him over his shoulder. They both vanished in a flash of light. Theodric awoke, to find himself in a mountain cave, clad in a warm, dry robe, and lying on a mat next to a burning fire. He could hear the loud roar of the snowstorm outside. An elderly, white-bearded, cloaked figure sat across the fire from him.
"It's about time you woke up. You've been unconscious for 3 days,"
said the old man.
"Here, have some fine wine from Fire Lotus's tavern. It will warm you up a bit."
The old man handed Theodric a wine flask.
"Thank you for rescuing me, kind sir. I am Theodric, a monk from St. Baldine's monastery. Who are you?"
asked Theodric.
"You may call me Nystal,"
answered the old man.
"The mad prophet Nystal?"
said Theodric.
"I heard you were once an advisor to Lord British himself long ago. What happened to you?"
"I've been busy searching for the new avatar for the past 36 years, for Lord Raine will be returning soon, and only the avatar will be able to defeat him once and for all,"
answered Nystal.
"But wasn't Raine slain by the avatar and Lord British 36 years ago?"
asked Theodric.
"No, he was merely defeated. I have chosen you to help me locate the new avatar and record the details of our journey for future generations. We will then help the avatar recover the lost fragments of the Amulet of Vezir, for only an avatar wielding the full power of the 9 dragons can hope to stop Lord Raine and his invading army,"
said Nystal. He pulled out a small golden metal fragment out of his belt pouch and held it in the palm of his hand. The fragment began glowing faintly.
"This will lead us to the new avatar," said
Nystal.
"What is it?"
asked Theodric.
"It is a fragment of the Amulet of Virtue, which was worn by the original avatar when he died battling Lord Raine 36 years ago,"
replied Nystal.
"It is mystically linked to the new avatar and will glow bright white when we find him or her."
"Who are you really?"
asked Theodric.
"Tell me the truth. I can sense when people are lying to me."
"Ah, yes, one of your many hidden gifts. You are a learned man. Tell me what you know about the old gods," said Nystal.
According to the Great Book of Aramis, long ago, Britannia faced a grave crisis known as the Great Cataclysm. On the moon Farallon, an enormous obsidian egg which had lain dormant in an underground cave for 1,000 years was struck by a dark magic spell cast by the evil wizard Sintar, the last surviving descendant of Mendark, who wanted revenge against Lord British for the crimes he committed against his ancestors. Sintar himself would later be hunted down and killed in a magic duel by Mariah, leader of the Council of Mages on New Britannia. The newly hatched Star Serpent threatened to destroy Farallon, which would have had catastrophic consequences for Britannia. Lord British had the Avatar jump into the Well of Eternity at the Temple of Argosa. The Avatar was instantly transported to the underground cave in Farallon. After a long and fierce battle, both the Avatar and the Star Serpent were seriously wounded. The people of Britannia assumed that both of them perished when the moon Farallon exploded. After the Avatar failed to return and Farallon exploded, Lord British went to Catatet, atop Mount Helios, and cast an unknown powerful magic spell, which had been entrusted to him in an effort to summon the old gods for help. And in case you forgot, Catatet is a stone circle of gods. It's a 25-foot tall obsidian statue arranged in a circle. It's rumored to be the spot where the old gods first set foot on Britannia long ago. The old gods had originally visited us thousands of years ago in Britannia when we were still primitive cave dwellers. The old gods lived in a silver city named Gidara, which floated in the sky. They were masters of both magic and science. The old gods mated with our women because their females could no longer bear children, hence, we are all descended from the old gods. In fact, it is said that the members of the 12 great houses who sit on the Great Council are descended from the members of the old gods' own Council of Elders. The old gods taught us how to make fire and clothing, tools and weapons, and gave us laws to govern us. After many years, the old gods left us, saying that their other children needed their help, but promised to return someday to aid us if necessary. The most famous of the old gods was warrior god Darhan, the ruler of the old gods. Darhan had 3 sons. The eldest, Jonir, was a mighty warrior and sorcerer, but he had a heart as black as night. He took great delight in tormenting mankind. The second son, Beric, was wise and kind and a powerful sorcerer. used his gifts to aid mankind. The youngest son, Galen, was a brave and powerful warrior who helped his brother Beric oppose Jonir's attempts to subjugate man. Eventually, Beric and Galen were forced to use their combined might to slay their evil brother, but not before Jonir managed to impart much of his knowledge of dark magic to his secret apprentice. As we learned 36 years ago, his secret apprentice was Lord Shadowrain. Among the other old gods was a wise and powerful renegade whose true name has been lost to the sands of time. A brilliant scientist, this inventor of time travel technology was one of the 3 founders of their society, the warrior god Darhan and the female mage god Cyril being the other 2, and was highly respected by the other old gods. He called himself Nystal, and he strongly disagreed with some of the less enlightened members of the Council of Elders who felt that the less developed civilizations should worship them as gods and serve as slave labor. Nystal resigned from his position on the Council of Elders, and left Gidara soon after the old gods originally departed from Britannia in order to explore time and space on his own. Of all the old gods, Nystal had spent the most time interacting with our people and developed a real fondness for us. He promised to return someday to see how we were doing, but this has not been since his departure all those years ago. Upon casting the spell, the 30 obsidian statues began glowing bright white and emitted beams of energy which caused a column of white light to form in the center of the circle where Lord British was standing. Lord British was rapidly propelled upwards into the sky by the column of light as astonished members of the Great Council looked on. Meanwhile, the people of Britannia began to panic and ran for cover as the smallest fragments of Faerlin began striking the planet as meteorites, demolishing structures and causing numerous fires. When all seemed lost, the floating city of Gidara suddenly appeared in the sky high above Castle Britannia. All Britannians were instantly transported to Gidara. Our people witnessed the destruction of the planet from the depths of space as the largest fragments of Faerlin smashed into our planet, causing it to explode. The old gods used something called a hyperdimensional drive to transport their city through the vortex to a parallel universe where Faerlin had only partially been destroyed. These parallel universes originally came into existence long ago when the Avatar shattered the Gem of Immortality in order to make Mendark mortal once again and allowing him to be slain. This parallel world was uninhabited because its former inhabitants were not visited by the old gods in the distant past and ended up killing each other in barbarian clan wars. After relocating us here to New Britannia, the old gods helped us rebuild all we had lost by providing us with advanced knowledge, technology, and materials. After several years, Darhan and the rest of the old gods departed our new world to explore other realms. Soon after the old god Silver City of Gidara left Mount Krendor and soared off into space, both Lord British and the Avatar suddenly reappeared in a flash of light in Castle New Britannia. The Great Council was in session, with no memory of what happened since their disappearance. When news of their reappearance spread to the general populace, some of the people wondered why Lord British now appeared to have a more youthful appearance, but most people overlooked this fact because they were just happy to have their beloved ruler back. The Book of Aramis suggests that some of the old gods never left and may still walk among us, but today, most of the people believe that Aramis's account of the Exodus and founding of New Britannia is merely a fable, and that the old gods never really existed at all,
said Theodric.
Really? Is that what you young people believe today? What would you say if I told you that everything described in the Book of Aramis was true?
Asked Nystal.
How could you possibly know that?
Asked a skeptical Theodric.
Because I was there to witness it,
replied Nystal.
We wouldn't have these problems with Lord Shadowrain today if Darhan had simply followed my advice and personally dealt with his son Jonir before he began down the path to darkness. I guess he was blinded by a father's love for his children.
You knew Darhan personally?
Asked a stunned Theodric.
Indeed, a brave and powerful man, but certainly not the wisest,
replied Nystal.
Stubborn as a mule, loved beautiful young women and wine. Not as much as I do, of course.
You still haven't answered my original question. Who are you?
Asked Theodric.
I am Nystal, although in the past I have also gone by the name Hawkwind and Time Lord. You must promise me never to reveal my true identity to anyone. For over 5,000 years, I have traveled through time and space, and while helping those in need, made many enemies, who would like nothing better than to see me dead. That is why I altered my physical appearance after I left the city of Gidara long ago. I deeply regret that I was not in Britannia at the time of the Great Cataclysm. Had I foreseen the rise of Centaur, perhaps I could have done something to stop him. Contrary to popular belief, despite our mastery of time travel, the old gods are not all-knowing. Thankfully, the summoning spell I had entrusted Lord British with on my last visit to Britannia in my guise as Time Lord was successful, and the majority of Britannians were saved and relocated here to New Britannia. About 200 years ago, my time ship was badly damaged following a hostile encounter with a Genrazi battlecruiser, and I was forced to crash land here on Mount Krendor. Based on this civilization's current rate of development, suitable replacement parts for my ship's damaged quantum field generator won't be available for approximately another 2,000 years. In the meantime, as far as the world is concerned, I am simply the mad prophet Nystal,
answered Nystal. Nystal noticed Theodric's puzzled expression.
You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
Said Nystal.
Forgive me, sometimes I do tend to ramble on a bit. Theodric, you are about to play a pivotal role in the history of New Britannia.
So why did you choose me to aid you in your quest?
Asked Theodric.
You remind me a lot of your grandfather, Tiberius, at this age,
replied Nystal.
You knew my grandfather?
Asked a surprised Theodric.
I never got the opportunity to know him. He died before I was even born.
That is most unfortunate. Like you, he was extremely bright and inquisitive. Always spoke his mind,
said Nystal.
We often debated long into the night about many topics such as philosophy, law, politics, and science. He rose from humble beginnings to become the greatest scholar of his era. That is why Lord British chose him to write his biography, Lord British, The Path of Virtue.
I know. Lord British's biography is still required reading in school today,
replied Theodric.
Did you know my grandmother as well?
Of course. When I first met Talia, she was an incredibly beautiful, fiery-tempered, powerful young mage, the exact opposite of your grandfather. Nobody thought that they would make a good couple, but I knew they were meant to be together. I introduced them to each other, and as you know, they ended up having a very long and happy life together,
said Nystal.
By the way, how is your grandmother doing these days?
Nystal smiled as his eyes briefly glowed. That evening, as Theodric slept, Nystal teleported out of the cave. In a moonlit clearing in the woods north of Libris stood a small wooden cottage. A wisp of grey smoke rose from the chimney. A white-bearded wizard sat on a rocking chair on the porch, smoking on a long bamboo pipe. In front of the cottage, a young female elf was practicing her fire magic. Lord Baldrith stopped smoking on his pipe and said,
Lantherthel, try that again. I want you to envision the fire forming in your hands. Shape it into a ball and let it loose upon your enemy.
Lantherthel concentrated and uttered the words of magic. A small ball of fire formed in her hands, and she hurled it at the plate armor-covered scarecrow standing in the distance. The fireball found its target, and the scarecrow erupted into flames. Lord Baldrith cast the ice spell Douse to extinguish the flames.
Excellent, my dear,
said Lord Baldrith as he smiled.
To think, just a month ago, you had trouble forming a fireball. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, Master,
replied Lantherthel.
You are such a great teacher.
Indeed he is,
said Nystal, who had suddenly appeared behind Lantherthel.
Godfather,
exclaimed Lantherthel as she turned around and gave him a big hug.
I haven't seen you for so long.
Yes, my child. I've been rather busy searching for the new avatar,
replied Nystal.
I see that Lord Baldrith has taught you well. You've made considerable progress since I last saw you 3 months ago.
It is good to see you, Master,
said Lord Baldrith, as he rose from his rocking chair and walked over to shake Nystal's hand.
Lantherthel gives me too much credit. She has a natural gift for magic, which is rare even among Sindarin elves. Thank you once again for entrusting me with her training in the mystic arts.
Lord Baldrith, you were my finest student. It was only natural that you would be the one to train Lantherthel,
said Nystal.
By the way, how's that staff holding up?
It has served me well all of these years,
replied Lord Baldrith, grasping the long, curvy staff with red gem on top.
I always thought that this was a fine graduation present, Nystal. As a matter of fact, just the other day I had to retrieve it from an annoying imp who stole it.
I'm sure you taught him the error of his ways,
said Nystal.
Indeed. I won't need to worry about him ever returning here to bother us again,
replied a grinning Lord Baldrith.
How is my brother Carlin doing?
Asked Lanthurthal.
He is busy tracking down a lead which he hopes will lead him to the dark elf archer Elir Ben Shademaster, who slew your parents,
said Nystal.
Did I ever tell you how your father Arithwan saved my life long ago soon after my arrival on New Britannia?
No, Godfather,
replied Lanthurthal.
I would very much like to hear that story.
Well then, let's go inside and have a seat around the fireplace, said Lord Baldrith. I'll boil us a kettle of water, and we can have some nice hot tea while listening to Nystal's tale.
Lord Baldrith, Lanthurthal, and Nystal entered the cottage. Nystal would not end up teleporting back to the cave on Mount Crendor until 4 hours later. The next morning, the snowstorm ended, and the sun came out. As Theodric was finishing packing up their supplies, Nystal walked over to him and handed him a well-crafted oak long staff.
Take this,
said Nystal.
You will need it during our long journey. I assume you have been trained in its use.
Yes, I have,
replied Theodric.
In fact, the Grand Abbot said that I showed such a natural proficiency with it that he assigned me to the task of training new monks how to use it to defend themselves. Do you expect us to encounter many dangerous foes on this journey?
Indeed,
said Nystal.
Lord Shadow Knight's minions are everywhere, and they will do whatever it takes to prevent the new Avatar from appearing to oppose their master's return.
I see,
replied Theodric.
Won't you need a weapon to defend yourself as well?
No,
said Nystal.
In addition to my innate abilities, I have also mastered all the schools of magic. Trust me, we'll be fine.
Theodric suddenly had an uneasy feeling as Nystal smiled at him. Meanwhile, at a warehouse in the port town of Geral, located on the southwestern tip of Novia, a large crowd had gathered to hear Marius, the handsome, charismatic young leader of the newly formed Home Guard, speak.
My fellow New Britannians, we face a crisis of epic proportion. These past decades, our world, our home, has been invaded by Offworlders, each claiming the mantle of our greatest hero. A mere 36 years after the Avatar gave his life to halt the evil of Lord Shadowrain, these pretenders claim to fill his boots. And yet while these false avatars are small of heart, their impact has been all too large. They have gorged themselves on the property of defenseless farmers, merchants, and travelers. They have quenched their thirst for blood with the lives of innocent civilians, and when not content to merely pillage and murder, they have slaked their vile lusts upon our women. And where is the protection owed to us? While our sons are bloodied and our daughters violated, what shelter have our hard-earned taxes purchased? Lord British has done nothing to stop the influx of Offworlders, and precious little to curb their actions. For our homes, for our wives, and for our children, we have no choice. It is up to us to take up arms and let these invaders know that they are not welcome in New Britannia,
said Marius.
But Marius, what can we do to stop these Offworlders? There have been numerous reports of slain Offworlders coming back to life as if nothing had happened,
asked a beautiful young, blue-eyed, blonde woman in the audience.
Yes, it is true that these Offworlders are quite resilient, but they can be destroyed. Fire, decapitation, just some of the tools the Home Guard has found to be effective,
replied Marius.
And we can teach those who have the will to do what we must. So, who will fight for our homes and our dreams? Who has the courage to turn back this tide? Who will stand with New Britannia? Who will stand with us?
Death to the Offworlders! All hail Marius! All hail the Home Guard!
Chanted the crowd, as they began waving their swords, battle axes, and sharp farm implements in the air. Later, After the crowd dispersed, Marius secretly met the blonde woman backstage.
I've missed you so much,
exclaimed Marius.
Me too,
replied the woman.
It's been so hard for me to get away from my husband.
As they embraced and passionately kissed.
That went even better than I expected,
said the woman.
I think we managed to recruit another 100 members to our cause.
Oh, I know I am merely the public face of the Home Guard, my dear,
replied Marius.
You are the one writing the speeches and providing most of the financial support for training, weapons. But Vostra, will you ever tell me your real name?
In time, lover. Right now, I think we should concentrate on other things,
said Vostra with a devilish grin. End of introduction. The Avatar Chronicles 1, Return of the Avatar. Episode 2. Chapter 1, Enemies and Allies. Somewhere on the road between Kingsport and Owl's Head. 5 years ago. It was a warm summer day, and about 24 members of the Church of Chaos, 12 armed, 12 unarmed, were travelling by horseback from Kingsport to Owl's Head.
Be on the lookout, my sisters,
said the lead rider, Sister Agnes, commander of the Shadow Guard, the military branch of the Church of Chaos.
I have received reports that dark elves might be nearby.
Sister Amber Raine rode alongside Sister Agnes. As her second in command, she was well aware of the dangers they faced passing this close to the forest. Amber's recently acquired pet wolf, whom she had named Mori Tura, trotted alongside her.
Sister Agnes, are you sure we brought enough shadow guards with us?
Asked Amber.
You worry too much, Sister Amber Raine,
replied Sister Agnes.
We can easily handle a group of dark elves.
Amber's pet wolf, Mori Tura, suddenly came to a halt and started growling loudly. He stared in the direction of the woods.
What's wrong, boy?
Asked Amber.
Do you sense danger?
Suddenly, Amber heard a familiar whizzing sound as an arrow struck Sister Agnes in the heart, and she fell from her horse, dead.
Sister Beatrice, you and the rear guard help our unarmed sisters to seek cover,
yelled Amber.
Everyone else, engage the enemy.
Amber was surprised to see 6 dark elf archers, swordsmen, and mages come charging out of the woods. Amber and her sisters dismounted and took up positions. Her archers took cover behind some nearby boulders and began firing poison-tipped arrows at the dark elf mages who were casting fireballs, while her mages began casting chaos bolts at the enemy. Sisters Amber, Melody, and Carlita rushed forward to engage the dark elves in hand-to-hand combat. Amber used her twin swords to finish off 2 dark elf swordsmen who charged at her, but did not see a 3rd dark elf swordsman sneaking up behind her. As he raised his sword and prepared to backstab her, Amber's wolf leapt into the air, tackled him, and ripped out his throat. Amber turned and nodded approvingly. Sister Amber and her fellow Shadow Guard members put up a good fight, but there were just too many dark elves to deal with. One by one, Amber saw the others fall, until she and Sister Melody were the last 2 Shadow Guard members left standing to defend the 9 surviving unarmed sisters who were hiding behind some nearby boulders. All seemed lost. Then Amber suddenly felt a sharp pain in her back as 3 dark elf poison-tipped arrows struck her. No problem, thought Amber. My enhanced healing factor should be able to handle this. But something felt wrong this time. Everything went black as she lost consciousness and fell to the ground. When Amber regained consciousness, she found herself lying on a mat in a cave, clad only in her underwear and covered with a blanket. Apparently, someone had removed her armour and put some sort of salve on her wounds and bandaged her up. Her pet wolf, Mori Tura, sat beside her with a sombre look on his face. Once he saw that she was conscious, he smiled and bent down to lick her face. Amber patted him on the head as she sat up.
Ah, you're finally awake. You were unconscious for about a day,
said a white-bearded fellow, clad in a white robe with black trim. The back of his robe was emblazoned with the image of a black hourglass.
Thank you for saving me, kind sir. But what of my sisters?
Said Amber.
I'm afraid they were all slain by the Dark Elves,
said the somber fellow.
You are fortunate that I happened to be riding by after the massacre. Your enhanced immune system couldn't handle the heavy dose of Batafan poison you received.
Batafan poison is extremely rare and is the only type of poison which is fatal to elves. It appears that you were specifically targeted, as I could find no trace of Batafan poison on the arrows which struck 2 of your fellow elven sisters.
My cure poison and healing spells did not seem to have any effect on you. You seem to have an extremely high natural resistance to magic. Thank heavens my late friend Christopher Nightshadow taught me a thing or two about herbal remedies long ago.
My sisters were all slain?
Whispered Amber Raine, as her eyes appeared to glaze over.
I have failed in my duty as a member of the Shadow Guard. I should join them in death.
Amber reached for the dagger she had strapped to her leg, but the old man swatted her hand away with his wooden staff.
Don't throw your life away like that,
admonished the old man.
You did the best you could under the circumstances. You were surprised and seriously outnumbered. There was nothing you could have done to change the outcome. What transpired was meant to be.
No, I can't believe that. Our Lord Chaos would not want his most devoted followers to be slaughtered by a bunch of foul creatures,
exclaimed Amber. The old man sighed.
I have seen much during my 5,000 years of existence, and I can assure you that this was a fixed point in time. Your sister's fate was sealed the moment they embarked on this journey. Your destiny lies elsewhere, said the old man.
Who are you?
Asked a wary Amber.
My name is Nystal, and I am here to help guide you to your proper path, Amber Raine,
replied a smiling Nystal, as his eyes began to glow. The port city of Argax. 5 p.m. The present.
Keep moving,
barked Amber Raine to her prisoner, as they emerged from the lunar rift outside the port city of Argax, located at the southeastern tip of Novia. The prisoner's hands were bound behind his back with derby-style handcuffs. Her pet wolf, Moritura, trotted alongside. The charming and handsome bandit leader, Red Badger, flashed a grin as he turned to Amber Raine and said,
It's not too late for you to let me go. I'll offer you triple whatever your employer is paying you. You know what they'll do to me if you turn me over. How could you do that to a hero of the common people in good conscience?
Amber snorted in disgust.
A hero to the common people,
replied Amber.
I suppose you're going to say that you're like Robin Hood, robbing from the rich to give to the poor.
Why, of course, said Red Badger.
Don't lie to me,
Amber angrily replied.
I know for a fact that only 10% of your ill-gotten gain goes back to the poor in the form of food or gold. The other 90% you keep for yourself.
I have expenses. I have many men to support.
Hogwash,
retorted Amber.
You spend the bulk of the money on wine, women, property, and rare and precious forms of art and literature.
I admit I do have an appreciation for the finer things in life, said Red Badger with a devilish grin. Especially beautiful and strong women such as yourself. Wouldn't you like to be my girlfriend, Amber? I could shower you in diamonds and pearls and silk dresses.
Shut up,
said Amber as she punched him in the jaw.
Ow, that really hurt,
exclaimed Red Badger as he rubbed his bruised jaw.
I always honor my commitment. My word is my bond,
said Amber as she glared at Red Badger.
I'll not be bought off with trinkets. Speak of this anymore and I will show you the meaning of real pain.
Red Badger knew Amber was being serious, so he decided to keep his mouth shut. As they approached the giant stone archway which marked the entry point to Argax, the normally stoic guard Bob suddenly smiled and waved to Amber.
Good to see you again, Amber,
said guard Bob.
You've been busy, I see.
Yes, The mayor will want to see this prisoner right away,
replied Amber.
He's the Red Badger.
The Red Badger?
Exclaimed Guard Bob.
You've been trying to catch him for the last 6 months. I'm very impressed.
Thank you, Bob.
Replied Amber.
Apprehending him wasn't easy.
By the way, I get off in an hour. Mind if I buy you a drink then at the Bear Tavern?
Asked Guard Bob.
I'll have to take a rain check,
said Amber apologetically.
after I drop off this fellow and collect my bounty. I have to get back to Brittany right away.
Okay, next time then,
said Guard Bob, trying to hide his disappointment. Amber escorted the prisoner to the front gate of the mayor's luxurious mansion, which, like much of Ardoris, had an Asian theme to it. A magnificent white marble water fountain, in the form of a globe held in the palm of an enormous hand, stood in the front yard. She informed one of the 2 guards at the front gate who she was, and the nature of her business. The guard rushed inside to inform the mayor, and Amber and her prisoner were soon ushered into the mayor's back office. The mayor was seated behind his desk, with his back to them, gazing out the window at his well-manicured Zen garden. 2 armed guards took up positions on either side of the door behind Amber and Red Badger.
Well done, Amber. You've succeeded where my guards have failed,
said Mayor Stile Teckel, as he turned around in his chair to face them.
So, you're the notorious Red Badger who has been attacking my trade caravans? You're a lot smaller than I expected.
Red Badger started to speak.
Mayor Teckel?
But the mayor cut him off with a gesture of his hand. Turning to Amber, Mayor Teckel said,
As soon as I received your message, I sent men to the secret cave hideout which you described. They were able to apprehend a dozen of the Red Badger's men and recover about half of the stolen loot. Tell me where I can find the rest of your men and the loot, and I promise you a swift and merciful death,
said the mayor.
Refuse, and I'll have my men torture you until you provide us with the information, and then you will be drawn and quartered at high noon in the city square.
Wait, that's not necessary,
said Red Badger.
I have even more valuable information to offer in exchange for my life.
What sort of information?
Asked a curious Mayor Teckel.
It wasn't by chance that I targeted your trade caravans, Mayor Teckel. I was acting under orders from my boss.
Your boss?
Asked Mayor Teckel.
And who might that be?
Duke Garin,
replied Red Badger.
What? That's utter nonsense,
said Mayor Teckel.
Duke Garin has no quarrel with me and is a highly respected member of the Great Council. He would not be consorting with criminals such as you.
I know it's hard to believe, but it's true,
said Red Badger.
Duke Garin is angry for losing the bid on the Namada Casino construction project to you. The potential revenue from the first casino to be constructed in New Britannia will be enormous.
Indeed it will be,
replied Mayor Teckel.
I've already entered into negotiations with the Bear Tavern to provide food and beverage services for the new casino, which will be built here in Ardoris. Duke Garin did seem somewhat disappointed in losing that bid. Perhaps you are telling the truth.
Mayor Teckel stroked his chin as he pondered the validity of Red Badger's claim.
I wouldn't trust a thing this scoundrel says,
said Amber.
He's trying to stir up trouble and save his own skin.
You have a point, Amber,
replied Mayor Teckel.
If Red Badger is lying and I make a move against Duke Garin, that would be disastrous. I would not want someone as rich as powerful as Duke Garin as an enemy.
Amber, you doubt my sincerity?
Asked Red Badger.
Well, here is a bit of information you might find interesting. Duke Garin has men searching for your old friend, Nystal.
Nystal? Why would Duke Garin be interested in Lord British's former advisor?
Asked Amber.
I don't know why he's interested in Nystal, but I do know that he has dispatched men to every city, town and village in New Britannia,
said Red Badger.
Do you want physical proof? Reach into my vest pocket.
Amber reached into Red Badger's vest pocket and pulled out a folded-up piece of parchment. Opening it up, she saw a wanted poster of Nystal, which had been distributed to all of Duke Garin's men. The wanted poster instructed his men to apprehend Nystal and bring him back to Duke Garin's castle just outside Brittany for questioning. Amber showed Mayor Teckel the wanted poster and then folded it up and put it in one of her belt pouches.
Well, it seems for once you're telling the truth, Red Badger,
said Amber.
Guards, take him away and throw him in my private dungeon. I will notify the Shogun Saranto, and he will decide what to do with him,
said Mayor Teckel. Hey, said Red Badger as the two guards dragged him away. After they left, Mayor Teckel took a small pouch full of gold coins out of his desk drawer and handed it to Amber.
Good work, Amber,
said Mayor Teckel.
I suspect I'll be in need of your services again soon.
Well, you know how to reach me if the need arises,
replied Amber.
What do you plan to do about Duke Aaron? I know you've already tied up a significant portion of your assets in the Nimida project. Without sufficient supplies and materials, the project will fail and you will be ruined.
I will have to plan my next move carefully,
said Mayor Teckel.
Duke Garen is not someone to be underestimated. I've spent too many years building my business empire to allow it to be brought down by that man. What are your plans, Amber?
I have to track down my old friend Nystal and warn him of the danger,
replied Amber.
Good luck to you,
said Mayor Teckel, shaking Amber's hand.
You too, Mayor,
said Amber. Amber turned and left the room. Outside the mayor's mansion, Amber found Mori Tura patiently sitting by the front gate. As Amber approached, he got up, and they began walking down the street. Suddenly they spied 3 teenage boys picking on a young 10-year-old girl.
Please give me back my ball,
asked the young girl.
I don't think so,
said one of the boys, passing it to one of his friends. The second boy taunted the girl by holding the ball in front of him. As the girl reached for the ball, he suddenly pulled it back beyond her reach, and then tossed the ball to a third friend. The third boy held the ball out just above the girl's head. The little girl jumped up to get it, but the boy suddenly held it high above his head, beyond her reach. The little girl jumped up again, but to no avail. The 3 boys started laughing. The little girl looked like she was about to cry when Amber and Mori Tura walked up. Amber glared at the boys and said,
Give the little girl her ball back.
Mori Tura started growling. The 3 boys suddenly looked very nervous. The third boy handed the ball back to the little girl.
Now leave, and if I ever catch you bothering this little girl again, you will surely regret it, said
Amber, as Mori Tura's eyes suddenly turned bright red and he bared all of his sharp, pearly white teeth.
Ah! It's some sort of demon wolf!
Cried one of the boys. The 3 boys turned and ran away as fast as they could.
Good boy,
said Amber, patting Mori Tura on the head, as his eyes returned to normal and he smiled at the little girl. The little girl walked up to Mori Tura and began petting him.
Good wolf,
she said.
You won't be friends?
Mori Tura nodded. Amber introduced herself to the little girl.
Hi, my name is Amber, and this is my pet wolf, Mori Tura,
said Amber.
Thank you for helping me, Amber,
said the little girl.
Those boys were really mean. I don't think you'll have to worry about them bothering you again,
replied Amber.
Right, Mori Tura?
Mori Tura nodded.
What's your name?
asked Amber.
My name is Sharia,
said the little girl.
Sharia? I know someone with that name,
said Amber. Amber suddenly remembered that right after she recovered from the Badafan poison 5 years ago, Nystal had introduced her to the holographic form of his wife, Sharia. This little girl looks exactly like her, Amber thought to herself. This can't be a coincidence. I better let Nystal know about this when I find him.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Sharia,
said Amber, shaking her hand.
Now I think it's best if you run along home now. I'm sure your parents must be worried.
There you are, Sharia,
shouted a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, middle-aged man clad in a knight's tunic as he ran over to hug Sharia.
You had me so worried. Never wander off like that when your grandmother falls asleep on the sofa.
But it's so nice and warm and I want to play outside with my ball,
said Sharia.
3 older boys were real mean to me, but this nice lady, her pet wolf, scared them away.
Thank you for coming to my daughter's aid, said the knight as he shook Amber's hand. I'm Sir Charles Campbell, Knight Commander in Lord British's Royal Army. Ever since my wife Helen passed away 3 years ago, it's been rather hard keeping an eye on Sharia. My mother is getting very old, and I had just sent our servant Niles to the market to fetch some lamb for Chef Robert to prepare some nice lamb stew for dinner. I was tending to our garden out back and didn't even notice that Chiria had wandered outside.
Well, no harm done,
replied Amber.
but you have to be more careful, Sharia. Moritura and I may not be around the next time you get in trouble. Do you understand? Yes, Amber,
said Chiria as she nodded her head.
You and Moritura must be hungry. Would you like to join us for dinner? I don't want to impose,
said Amber.
Nonsense. It's the least I can do,
replied Sir Charles Campbell.
I won't take no for an answer.
What do you think, Moritura?
Asked Amber, turning to her pet wolf.
Should we join Sharia and her father for dinner?
Moritura thought to himself, I really wish I could speak. I hate being trapped in this wolf form. His mind drifted back to the past. 5.5 years ago, Castle New Britannia. Samuel was hard at work in his studio in Castle New Britannia, completing the painting his liege, Lord British, had commissioned of his lovely wife, Lady Arabella. As he moved his enchanted paintbrush, said to be once owned by the great Italian artist Caravaggio, an influential figure of the Baroque period, across the canvas, images suddenly appeared, despite the fact that he was not using any paint at all. A few more touches, and it was complete. Samuel gazed at the painting. He knew that his liege would be very pleased with it. Setting down his enchanted paintbrush, he got up and examined the other paintings he had recently completed for his liege, which were leaning against a nearby wall. One was a rather peaceful painting of a warm spring day in the Valley of Fallen Heroes. Taking a closer look at the background, he noticed two odd things which he hadn't been aware of before. First, that single white dove flying overhead. Was it his imagination, or was its eye actually glowing? And where did that smiling purple llama standing atop a nearby hill suddenly come from? Strange indeed. Samuel moved on to the second painting, which depicted Castle New Britannia as it would be viewed from someone standing near the front gate. He suddenly noticed that there appeared to be a light on in one of the upper tower rooms, and a figure standing in front of the window. Who was that? Samuel peered closer. He couldn't make out the person's face, just a shadowy, hooded figure pointing a finger directly at him. This was getting to be too eerie. Samuel moved on to the third and final painting, which was a headshot of a black wolf staring right at the viewer. There was something odd about the eyes. When viewed one way, the eyes appeared yellow, but when viewed from another angle, they appeared to be red. Since being appointed by Lord British to the position of Royal Artist, Samuel was afforded the privilege of keeping some of his own artwork to decorate his own quarters or to sell as he saw fit. Now it was time to paint something for himself. Samuel picked up a blank canvas and placed it on his second easel. Picking up his enchanted paintbrush, he let his imagination run wild as an image slowly started to form on the blank canvas. When he was done, he gasped. Before him was the face of the most beautiful red-headed elf he had ever seen. There was a sad look in her eyes, though, that hinted at some hidden pain. Samuel was suddenly interrupted by the sound of a rather familiar, annoying voice.
Greetings, Samuel. How are you doing on this fine spring day?
Said Duke Garin as he entered the studio.
Just fine, Duke Garin,
replied Samuel as he forced himself to smile.
What brings you here today?
I was visiting Lord British to discuss some court business. I'm here to offer you a business proposal,
said a smiling Duke Garin.
What sort of business proposal?
Asked Samuel.
I have always been a big fan of your artwork, Samuel. I will pay you double whatever Lord British is currently paying you, along with food and lodging, if you come and work for me instead,
replied Duke Garin.
Thank you for the generous offer, Duke Garin, but I must decline,
said Samuel.
I am quite happy working for Lord British.
You were refusing my offer?
Yelled Duke Garin.
How dare you? I think you should reconsider, or you will surely regret it,
hissed Duke Garin.
I don't take too kindly to threats, Duke Garin,
replied Samuel.
Furthermore, I don't think Lord British would tolerate this sort of behavior either.
Suddenly, Samuel found that he could neither move nor speak. A hooded figure appeared in the doorway and was pointing his finger at Samuel, just like in the painting. The figure pulled down his hood to reveal a tall albino man with red glowing eyes.
I always get what I want. If I can't have you, then I will make sure that nobody else will either,
hissed Duke Garin. Glancing over at the painting of the wolf, Duke Garin suddenly had a wicked smile on his face.
So you like wolves, Samuel,
said Duke Garin.
Very well then, a wolf you shall be.
Duke Garin started casting a spell, and Samuel felt himself changing. A few moments later, he glanced over into the dressing room mirror behind Duke Garin and saw that he was now a black wolf, identical to the one in the painting.
That will teach you for defying me,
cackled Duke Garin. He nodded to the tall albino man. The tall albino man smiled and extended his arm, pointing towards the door. In his mind, Samuel could feel rather than hear the command, "Run away, little wolf, far, far away." Samuel was suddenly no longer paralyzed and was compelled to run out of the studio as fast as his legs could take him. He ran out of the castle, through the streets of Brittany, and into the nearby forest. After about an hour, he was finally free of the tall albino man's influence and was able to stop. He was totally exhausted and panting. Samuel looked around. He was deep in the forest and completely lost. Suddenly, he heard the sound of growling behind him. He turned around to find himself facing a giant brown bear. The bear swatted him aside with one of his sharp claws. Samuel landed on his back nearby. He felt the sharp pain from the deep claw marks in his chest and saw the rapidly expanding pool of blood forming on his black fur. The growling bear was rapidly approaching, but Samuel didn't even have enough strength left to right himself. What a terrible way to die, Samuel thought. Suddenly, the bear was struck in the chest by 3 throwing knives, and a figure in black suddenly jumped in front of him and finished the bear off with a pair of swords. Everything faded to black as Samuel lost consciousness. Several hours later, as Samuel slowly regained consciousness and opened his eyes, he realized that his head was lying in someone's lap. His mysterious saviour had apparently bandaged his wounds and was petting him on the head. Samuel looked up and found himself staring into the face of the beautiful red-headed female elf whom he had painted earlier that day.
"Are you feeling better, boy?"
she asked in a very soothing voice. The elf identified herself as Amber Raine and, turning to Sister Agnes, asked if she could keep the wolf as her own. Sister Agnes initially refused, as pets were forbidden in the church, but Amber was insistent, pointing out that the wolf would surely die if they left him in the wilderness. Seeing Amber's devotion and obvious love for the wolf, Sister Agnes interceded with the High Priestess, and Amber was allowed to keep him, on condition that she became totally responsible for his upkeep.
"Thank you, Sister Agnes,"
replied a joyful Sister Amber Raine.
"I think I will name him Moritora."
Amber Raine turned to her new pet wolf and said,
"Hi, Moritora. My name is Amber Raine. I think we're going to be really good friends."
Samuel looked up into Amber's eyes. He had always been popular with the ladies of the court because of his incredible good looks and his position as royal artist, but he had never found anyone he wanted to spend the rest of his life with, until now. He found it rather ironic that now he had found his one true love, he was cursed to be in this wolf form. But at that very moment, Samuel knew that he would never leave Amber's side. He hoped that one day he would find a way to break this curse and give her all the love she deserved. Right after he ripped out the throats of that damn Duke Garin and tall albino man.
Back in the present, Moritura nodded.
Well, it's settled then,
said Amber.
Moritura and I would be happy to join you in Sharia for dinner.
Excellent, said Sir Charles Campbell, taking hold of Charia's right hand. My home is just down the street. Amber and Moritura followed the two of them to Sir Charles Campbell's founder night home near the stone wall marking the edge of the inner city. As they entered the home, Sharia smiled. Amber is such a nice lady, she thought to herself. Maybe father will like her, and she will become my new mommy. The Magasa Forest. 5 p.m. The present. Theodric had decided to scout ahead of Nystal, when suddenly he heard the sounds of men shouting, and strange humming and clanking noises. He heard a man shout, "Hurry! I think he fled this way." Soon, Theodric found himself facing 15 oracle flies, spiders, and obsidian soldiers.
"You there!"
yelled one of the soldiers.
"Did you see a ranger come this way?"
"No, sir,"
replied Theodric. This didn't make any sense at all, Theodric thought to himself. Why would there be some of the oracle's droids running around here, and allied with her bitter enemies, the obsidians?
"I see,"
replied the soldier.
"Seize that man. We'll take him back to the temple for conversion. He will make a fine addition to our army. All hail the Oracle."
Two of the other soldiers stepped forward, but Theodric grabbed hold of his long staff and began spinning it around. Suddenly, one of the soldiers fell back dead, an arrow sticking out of his chest.
"That arrow came from up there,"
shouted the other soldier, pointing to some nearby tree. He never got to finish his sentence, as he too was cut down by another arrow. One of the oracle flies fired a laser beam at one of the trees. Theodric heard someone grunt in pain, and a figure fell from one of the nearby trees. The figure quickly rolled on the ground to extinguish the flames coming from his left shoulder, and quickly came up on one knee and fired another arrow at the oracle fly. The oracle fly exploded into tiny pieces.
"Attack!"
yelled the enemy commander. The remaining soldiers, spiders, and flies surged forward. A massive obsidian soldier charged at Theodric.
"Those who do not serve the Oracle shall die!"
he yelled, as he swung his sword at Theodric's head. Theodric easily dodged the attack, and knocked him to the ground with a leg sweep. He knocked him unconscious with his staff before he had a chance to recover. The ranger fired 3 more arrows in rapid succession at their foes, taking out an oracle fly, an oracle spider, and an obsidian soldier. I'd never seen an archer move that fast before, Theodric thought to himself, as he smashed an oracle spider into a tree with his long staff. Thanks to his enhanced sense of hearing, which he had developed during the years he spent immersing himself in the martial arts at the monastery, Theodric heard a humming sound coming from some distance behind him. He quickly turned around and saw an oracle fly which had flown behind the ranger undetected.
"Look out behind you!"
yelled Theodric, as he quickly grabbed one of his hunting knives and hurled it at the oracle fly. The oracle fly was impaled against a tree. The ranger nodded to Theodric, then dropped his bow, for he had run out of arrows, and drew his long sword. The two of them stood back to back, and quickly dealt with the remaining foes who had surrounded them. After the last foe had fallen, the ranger shook Theodric's hand and introduced himself.
"Thanks for the help. I'm Carlin, the druid archer,"
said the ranger.
"I'm Theodric. Glad to be of assistance,"
replied Theodric.
"Why were those soldiers and droids pursuing you?"
"That was one of the Oracle's hunting parties, which I happened to stumble across,"
replied Carlin.
"Although the Dragon Lords helped Lord British and the Avatar defeat the Oracle long ago, some of her droids and neurologically implanted human soldiers still exist, and continue to follow their prime directive, seek out humans to convert into Oracle followers. There must be an Oracle temple nearby, because I know that the droids have a limited range. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if remnants of the Obsidian's Eye's forces still exist today as well."
Meanwhile,
A short distance away, Nystal suddenly cried out in pain.
What's wrong, my love?
Asked Cheria, as Nystal began clutching his head with both his hands.
The pain. My head feels like it's on fire,
screamed Nystal. Nystal suddenly found himself on the astral plane and facing Vastra, who was clad in sexy green silk lingerie.
Hello, Nystal. Miss me?
Said Vastra, with an evil grin on her face.
How dare you mentally attack me, you witch?
Roared Nystal.
Now, is that any way to talk to your ex-fiancé?
Replied Vastra, feigning a look of disappointment.
I won't fall for your tricks, Vastra,
said Nystal.
It's a good thing that I figured out before our wedding 2,000 years ago what a lying, scheming witch you truly are. You were just using me as a means to obtain wealth and power.
Of course, my dear,
answered Vastra.
That's what matters most in life.
What are you doing in New Britannia anyway?
Asked Nystal.
I have no doubt that you have enchanted some poor noble with your feminine charms.
I am here on behalf of my master, Lord Chaos, to give you a warning, said
Vastra.
Abandon your quest to find the new avatar. Let Lord Shadowring conquer New Britannia and dispose of his brother, Lord British. I understand that after 200 years, you still have been unable to create a new body for your wife, Cheria. Well, I don't understand why you would settle for someone who is far less beautiful than I. If you join us, my master will see to it that your wish will be granted.
Nystal was tempted by Vastra's offer, but said,
I will never serve chaos. Get out of my sight, Vastra, before I do something I regret.
Nystal's eyes started glowing.
Don't say I didn't warn you, Nystal,
said Vastra.
You will regret opposing us.
Vastra's eyes started glowing, and then another shadowy cloaked figure suddenly appeared beside her. Nystal couldn't make out his face, but saw his eyes glowed bright red. The force of their combined mental attack was too much for Nystal. In the physical world, Nystal lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Meanwhile, Theodric and Carlin heard some disturbingly familiar sounds. They turned around and found themselves facing another 30 oracle flies, spiders, and obsidian soldiers. These oracle flies and spiders seemed much larger, were jet black in colour, and sported razor-sharp adamantium mandibles. The oracle spiders had spiderweb cannons mounted on their backs. Carlin uttered,
Damn oracle droids.
Hey, wake up!
Cheria shouted.
What?
Said a groggy Nystal as he regained consciousness.
What happened?
You suddenly got dizzy and passed out,
replied Cheria.
Hurry! You must help Theodric and Carlin before they're captured or killed by the Oracle's hunting party.
No. I will observe and advise, but I will never get directly involved in a conflict ever again, said
Nystal.
But if you don't intervene, they will die, or even worse, be converted into mindless oracle drones, like those captured obsidian soldiers were,
said Cheria.
I can't, said Nystal.
Why not?
Asked Cheria.
Because the last time I did, you died,
sobbed Nystal, tears rolling down his cheeks. Cheria's holographic form suddenly appeared alongside Nystal and stroked his cheek.
Oh, my darling, even after all those years, you still haven't forgiven yourself for my death, have you?
Said Cheria.
No, I guess I haven't. And despite mastering all the schools of magic over the past 200 years, I've still been unable to create you a new immortal body. In another 300 years, the cube's power source will be depleted, said Nystal, choking back the tears.
I know how hard you've tried, dear,
said Cheria, putting her hand on his shoulder.
But even if you fail, 500 years is far longer than the little time we would have had together if I still had my mortal form. Remember that I fell in love with you because you are a good and kind-hearted person, always helping those in need and striving to do what's right.
Cheria leaned over and kissed Nystal on the cheek. The spark of energy tingled.
You're right, my dear. It's time for me to take action,
said Nystal, as his eyes began to glow. Despite taking down 15 of their foes, Theodric and Carlin were now completely surrounded.
Surrender, and you will be spared,
said the enemy commander. Carlin spat blood in the enemy commander's face.
I would rather die than become a mindless servant of the Oracle,
shouted Carlin, as he assumed a battle stance with his bloody long sword.
Very well then, I will grant your wish,
replied the enemy commander.
Kill the unbelievers.
But before anyone could react, 4 of the Oracle spiders and 4 of the Oracle flies were hit by Nystal's chain lightning. Nystal then cast Gust, causing one soldier to smash into a tree. Theodric heard the soldier's bones break as he fell to the ground dead. A stone fist caught another soldier in the chest, causing him to cough up blood and drop dead. 2 soldiers charged at Nystal with swords drawn from opposite directions. He disarmed them both and then grabbed both of them by the throat and smashed their skulls together. After dropping their dead bodies, another soldier wielding a battle axe charged straight at Nystal. Nystal dodged his attack and then punched a hole straight through his chest. The stunned soldier looked down at the gaping wound and fell to the ground dead. Nystal hit another soldier in the face with his flame fist, decapitating him in the process, and sending the soldier's flaming head flying. It struck another soldier right in the face, killing him as well. A few minutes later, he heard Cheria say,
"That's enough, dear. They're all dead now."
Nystal's eyes stopped glowing, and he surveyed the carnage. He had single-handedly wiped out half the Oracle's hunting party. Theodric and Carlin stood in awe.
Thank you for coming to our aid, Master,
said Theodric.
I did not realize how truly powerful you were until now.
Good to see you again, old friend,
said Carlin, shaking Nystal's hand.
Carlin, I know you've been busy tracking down that elf archer, Elbin Shademaster, but I really need your help, said Time Lord. Theodric and I are on our way to meet the new Avatar. The fate of New Britannia rests in our hands.
Of course I will help you, Nystal,
replied Carlin.
I've waited many years to avenge the murder of my adopted parents, but I can be patient a little longer. And how is my elvish sister, and Thurthel, progressing in her magical studies?
Lord Baldrith tells me that she has mastered fire magic and is starting to learn water magic, replied Nystal. You really should pay her a visit sometime soon.
No, I don't want to distract her from her studies,
said Carlin.
And her location must continue to remain a secret. Her life remains in danger as long as Alirabin remains free.
I know,
replied Nystal.
Perhaps it is best that you keep your distance from her until Alirabin has been found and dealt with.
Meanwhile, back at the warehouse in Geral, Vastra handed drawings of Nystal, Theodric, and Carlin to her young lover Marius, leader of the Home Guard.
Make sure all our people know that these men are to be taken alive. They have information vital to our cause and must be brought here to headquarters for interrogation,
said Vastra.
Of course, my dear,
replied Marius. Vastra grabbed Marius and pulled him in close and gave him a passionate kiss.
I will see you in 2 weeks,
said Vastra in a sexy voice as she whispered in his ear.
I must hurry back to the castle now.
I will be counting the days till we are together again,
said Marius before departing. After Marius left, a black cloaked figure emerged from behind a curtain. The cloaked figure removed his hood, revealing his identity.
The love-struck fool has no idea what's really going on, does he?
Asked the tall albino man.
No, he doesn't,
replied Vastra with a smirk on her face.
I'm always amazed at how easily men are distracted by a beautiful face and body.
Indeed, dear sister, no man has ever been able to resist you except that old fool, Nystal,
said the tall albino man.
Yes, I will make sure he suffers greatly for rejecting me,
said an angry Vastra.
after he has been both physically and mentally tortured, I will crush that Redolzen mind cube with my bare hands in front of Nystal's eyes, and then I will rip his beating heart out of his chest and show it to him as he dies.
Well, dear sister, I guess I better make sure to never get on your bad side,
said the tall albino man.
Don't worry, big brother. You know how much I love you,
said Vastra as she gave him a big hug.
You're the only family I have left.
Remember, I will always be here for you, little sister,
replied the tall albino man as he lovingly stroked Vastra's hair and deeply inhaled her lavender perfume. She smelled so good, the tall albino man thought to himself. The Avatar Chronicles 1. Return of the Avatar. Episode 3. Chapter 2. Gabriel's story. Love. Earth, Poughkeepsie, New York. The present. Sunset fell on the battlefield. The medieval battle reenactment was over. Lord Gabriel Dane's forces had defeated those of Lord Robert Darrington's after a fierce 3-hour battle. As the members for the Society for Creative Anachronism, SCA, sat down to a medieval banquet in their finest noble attire, they began to talk about best-selling science fiction and fantasy novelist Gabriel Dane's latest novel.
A toast to Lord Dane for a hard-fought victory,
said John, as he raised his wine goblet. Everyone else raised their goblet in response.
Gabriel, I must say that I was not expecting that last disarming maneuver. Most impressive,
said Robert.
By the way, I heard that the first book in your new fantasy series, the Avatar Chronicles, reached #1 on every bestsellers list in its first week of release. 2 million hardcover copies? At this pace, I think it'll outsell your Time Lord series.
So, how did you come up with the idea for your new book series?
Asked Henry. Gabriel Dane paused for a moment before answering.
For the last 9 months, I've been having these strange dreams about a realm named New Britannia. It seems so real to me, as if I've actually been there,
said Gabriel.
Come on, quit joking, Gabriel,
said Sarah.
You probably came up with that idea over drinks at the Foxfire Club.
So, Gabriel, any truth to the rumours that you're currently dating supermodel Alexandra Covington?
Asked Brian.
No,
answered Gabriel, as he touched the white gold ink pendant dangling from his neck.
You know that Shannon was the only love of my life.
Gabriel suddenly thought back to when his late wife had given him the pendant as a 4th anniversary gift following a romantic candlelit dinner in their suite at Ashford Castle in County Galway, Ireland.
But Shannon has been dead for 3 years,
said Brian.
Don't you think it's about time for you to move on?
As Gabriel looked at the Irish Claddagh ring on his finger, he remembered the first time that he and Shannon met. Gabriel had been on a book tour of the United Kingdom to promote the 13th and final book in his Time Lord series, The Death of a Time Lord. After wrapping up the book tour, Gabriel had decided to spend a couple of days taking in the sights of Cardiff, Wales. As a VIP member of famed Irish mezzo-soprano Shannon Donohue's fan club, he had been one of the 24 lucky fans chosen at random for a meet and greet with Shannon, following her concert that evening at Cardiff International Arena. When it was Gabriel's turn to have her sign a photo for him, their eyes locked, and it truly was love at first sight. Later that evening, they met for drinks and talked long into the night about their interests, their hopes, and their dreams. 1 year later, they were married in a lavish wedding ceremony at Ashford Castle in County Galway, Ireland. At the wedding, one of Gabriel's friends, Charles Whittaker, Professor of Irish Studies at the University of Notre Dame, noted that Gabriel was a very lucky fellow because Shannon was a striking beauty who bore an uncanny resemblance to Bridget, the Celtic goddess of fire, water, and healing. Gabriel had dated many beautiful actresses and models before he met Shannon, but all those relationships were shallow and short-lived. Shannon was different. She truly was Gabriel's soulmate. The 5 short years they had together were the happiest days of Gabriel's life. Jessica saw the sad look in her dear friend Gabriel's eyes. Jessica had known Gabriel since their freshman year at New York University 22 years ago. They had even dated briefly, but soon discovered that they made better friends than lovers. Jessica knew that Gabriel had never really been the same since losing his wife, Shannon, to lung cancer. The best doctors in the world couldn't figure out how someone in excellent physical condition could suddenly develop stage 4 lung cancer and decline so rapidly. The doctors had been unable to identify the pathogen, other than the fact that it appeared to be extraterrestrial in nature. Shannon died 3 months after her initial diagnosis. As Gabriel's closest friend, Jessica had been one of the few people with him at Shannon's bedside as she passed away. Jessica shot Brian an accusatory glance, and then tried to defuse the situation by quickly changing the subject.
Honestly, Gabriel, I don't see how you have any time to write these days in light of your blossoming pop career,
said Jessica.
Your debut album, Shadows and Light, has been #1 on the pop album chart for, 8 weeks now, and 10 million copies sold? Every time I turn on the radio, I hear your single, Song of Love. Oh, and all I ever hear from my teenage stepdaughter Lori and her friends these days is, who is that sexy masked Nightshadow fellow?
Everyone laughed.
Gabriel, you are a true Renaissance man. Author, singer, songwriter, martial artist, armourer, and swordsmith,
said Morgan.
Is there anything you can't do?
Gabriel was about to respond when suddenly a lunar rift appeared a few feet behind him. As the shocked diners looked on, a tendril of white energy emerged from the rift and pulled him in. In the confusion, the other diners failed to notice that Jessica smiled as her eyes briefly glowed.
I hope you find what you're looking for in New Britannia, Gabriel,
she whispered to us. The lunar rift deposited him on a grassy field. Gabriel got up and looked around. He saw a lone white dove soaring overhead. Suddenly there was a slight breeze, and Gabriel noticed a skull lying at his feet. He picked it up and was instantly flooded with memories from the final battle with Lord Shadow Raine 40 years ago. Gabriel quickly dropped the skull and staggered back.
Where am I?
Said Gabriel.
This looks like Philura Field in New Britannia, but that can't possibly be.
Gabriel suddenly felt a tingling sensation in his head and quickly turned around to face a 7.5-foot tall, highly muscular, bald warrior with a Van Dyke beard, who was wearing black studded leather armour with a skull-shaped belt buckle and wielding a massive 2-handed red battle axe, which had an eerie black glow. Gabriel could swear he heard the battle axe whisper,
"Feed me." "Ah, another avatar for me to kill,"
bellowed the warrior.
"Never let it be said that Malgor the Mighty wasn't fair. Pick up the sword and defend yourself."
Gabriel reached for the sword lying on the ground. Malgor the Mighty swung his massive battle axe directly at Gabriel's head. Gabriel tried to parry, but the force of the enchanted battle axe shattered his sword in half. Gabriel barely managed to dodge the next blow, thanks to the lightning-fast reflexes he had developed during his many years of martial arts training in the Far East. He quickly dropped the broken hilt and countered with a dragon fist punch, followed by a butterfly kick. Malgor was knocked back a short distance, but quickly recovered. Gabriel did a quick combat analysis. Malgor's armour prevented Gabriel from attacking his pressure points and paralysing him. Furthermore, Gabriel's powerful punches and kicks barely seemed to faze Malgor. The only vulnerable area seemed to be Malgor's unprotected head.
"Is that the best you've got?"
laughed Malgor.
I've killed over 600 other potential avatars since I arrived here from Earth 6 months ago, and most of them were a lot tougher than you. No one can escape my Muramasa battle axe. PK's rule. In the end, there can be only one avatar.
Muramasa battle axe? How was that possible? Everyone knew that Muramasa was a famous swordsmith, Gabriel thought to himself, as Malgor swung his mighty battle axe at Gabriel's head again. Gabriel dodged the blow and countered with a phoenix eye strike to Malgor's temple. Malgor immediately coughed up blood, dropped his battle axe, and fell flat on his face, dead. Gabriel noticed that Malgor's corpse suddenly began losing muscle mass rapidly. Soon, his corpse reverted to its true 5-foot-tall, 130-pound form. Gabriel heard the battle axe whisper to him,
"Take me."
He felt compelled to pick up the battle axe and examine it. As soon as Gabriel grasped the battle axe, he was instantly bombarded with images from the battle axe's past. Despite its massive size, it did not feel heavier than a normal-sized one-handed axe. The handle had strange runes engraved in it, and there was a blood-red gem embedded at its base. Gabriel heard the battle axe say,
"Feed me blood, and I will make you strong enough to defeat all your enemies."
"Do not try to tempt me, foul demon,"
said Gabriel.
"The battle axe has revealed the truth to me. Malgor's real name was Marvin Blatz, aka Hack and Slash, a professional video game player. You were simply using Marvin by preying on his bloodlust and his need to win at any cost. Once he decapitated his 666th victim, you would have been freed from your prison to wreak havoc on New Britannia. I will not let more innocent blood be spilled."
Gabriel's eyes suddenly turned bright white as he strongly gripped the battle axe. Suddenly, the battle axe was engulfed by white fire, which erupted from Gabriel's hands. Gabriel seemed unaffected by the flames, but the battle axe screamed out in pain.
"Ah, the white fire burns! How dare you resist me? I am the Demon Lord Argax. I will not be defeated by a mere mortal."
The battle axe began to glow bright white. Gabriel hurled the flaming battle axe high into the air. The battle axe screamed as it exploded. Gabriel's eyes reverted to their normal appearance. Gabriel's keen sense of hearing alerted him to the sudden presence of 3 hearts beating behind him, and he quickly turned around.
"Most impressive, Gabriel,"
said the elderly, white-bearded, robed figure standing in front of him.
"I've been expecting you. Allow me to introduce my assistant, Theodric, and my good friend Carlin."
The young monk, standing next to the old man, stared in awe at Gabriel as the small metal fragment in the palm of Nystal's right hand began to glow bright white. The archer, standing next to him, seemed intrigued by this turn of events. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and the Avatar's Sword of Virtue appeared in Gabriel's hands. The sword suddenly began changing shape, transforming into the Masamune Dragon Katana. Being a highly skilled swordsmith himself, Gabriel marvelled at the level of craftsmanship. At the base of the golden blade was a circular handguard, comprised of 2 intertwined dragons, one red and one black. The red silk-wrapped hilt had a solid gold dragon's head pommel with red ruby eyes. Both of the red ruby eyes and the 8 runes of virtue engraved on the hilt began to glow, and Gabriel could swear that he heard a dragon roar emanate from the sword. Unbeknownst to anyone, all across New Britannia, the 9 legendary dragons suddenly began to awake from their 40-year slumber. Upon opening his eyes in his underworld lair, the black dragon Kuroseth used the bond he shared with the members of the Nightshadow clan to appear to Gabriel in a vision, and said,
"Greetings, Gabriel Nightshadow. I am Kuroseth, one of the 9 legendary dragons. Long have I waited to renew the covenant with the last Dragonborn."
At the abandoned ruins of Castle Jinnar, former base of operations for the 9 Dragon Lords, overlooking the cliffs of Avon, a strong gust of wind blew away the cobwebs in the main council chamber, as all of the torches throughout the castle suddenly lit up. Meanwhile, back at Falura Field, a startled and somewhat confused Gabriel sheathed the katana in the red lacquered scabbard which had suddenly appeared at his side. Everyone failed to notice that an image of Gabriel's late wife Shannon briefly appeared in his white gold ankh pendant as well.
Theodric, please fetch me the enchanted black plate armor we recovered from the crypt,
said Nystal.
You don't remember me, do you?
No. Have we met before?
Asked Gabriel.
Something's not right,
said a puzzled Nystal, as he reached out and touched Gabriel's forehead with the palm of his hand.
Someone's placed a mental block in your head in order to prevent you from remembering your past lives. Let me fix that.
Nystal's hand glowed for a moment, and then Gabriel was instantly flooded with memories from the past. He remembered that he and his fraternal twin brother Lucius had both held the rank of Primus Pilus, senior centurion of a Roman legion equivalent in rank to a lieutenant colonel today, in the Roman army, prior to being chosen by Lord Order and Lord Chaos to be their respective champions in their eternal battle. Gabriel had been reborn in many different bodies over the past 2,000 years, as were the companions who Lord Order had seen fit to grant him to aid in his never-ending battle with Lucius. In addition to Nystal, there were always 2 other male companions and a female companion as well. Nystal was different from the other companions because his form never changed, as he was immortal. The only thing which comforted Gabriel was discovering that, as he was constantly being reborn into new bodies, so too was his beloved wife Shannon. He looked forward to seeing her again in his next life, for they had so little time together in this one. The last recovered memory, which Gabriel had, was being handcuffed to a chair in a darkly lit room in an abandoned warehouse sometime in 1987. Seated across the table from him was a very tall, about 6'10", albino man with long white hair. He was dressed in the attire of a proper Victorian gentleman, with a red silk puff tie, black Bancroft double-breasted vest, and a black Victorian cutaway coat.
My master would prefer that I do a complete memory wipe of your mind, but it seems that your innate mental defenses are far stronger than I had anticipated,
said the tall albino man.
The best I can do is to place a mental block that will prevent you from remembering anything from your past lives.
As the tall albino man reached out toward Gabriel's forehead with his pale white hand, Gabriel said,
"One day, I will find you, and I will make you pay for this."
You're welcome to try, but I highly doubt that's ever going to happen,
replied the tall albino man with a wicked smile on his face. The last thing Gabriel remembered seeing was the tall albino man's platinum diamond-encrusted ring on his outstretched hand. What was that symbol in the centre? Gabriel concentrated on the memory, and the blurry image came into focus. It was the symbol of chaos.
"I remember everything," exclaimed
Gabriel as he gave Nystal a bear hug.
"It's good to see you again, my old friend. What has transpired since we last met?"
New Britannia is in grave peril. Lord British's half-brother, Lord Shadowrain, is preparing to attack this realm in 6 months' time with an alien invasion force he has gathered at the other end of the universe. Our only hope of stopping him is recovering the 9 fragments of the Amulet of Vazur, and summoning the 9 dragons of legend. But this task will be very difficult, for Lord Shadowrain's minions are everywhere, including your brother Lucius.
Why am I not surprised?
Replied Gabriel.
Welcome home, Avatar,
said a smiling Nystal.
We have much work to do.
High above, the lone white dove happily cooed as its eyes briefly glowed. It turned and flew off toward the horizon.
At last, I am finally able to penetrate Nystal's cloaking field,
said the handsome dark-haired young nobleman as he peered into the scrying pool.
So, that's the new Avatar?
Yes, Duke Garen,
replied the fat, balding, middle-aged wizard Marek, who was standing to the right of him. Lucius, i.e. Duke Garen, immediately sensed his brother Gabriel's soul in this new form, but decided it was best not to let the others know about this fact, for these mere mortals knew nothing of their eternal battle.
I am not impressed,
replied a smirking Duke Garen. He turned to the beautiful red-haired young woman, clad in black leather armor and wielding a double-bladed sword, standing to his left. The young woman was the spitting image of Gabriel's late wife Shannon. Marek leered at the woman, while Duke Garen had his back turned to him.
Annies, take 24 of your best assassins and proceed to the Valley of the Fallen Heroes and ambush the Avatar and his companions as they pass through there. It is fitting that their final resting place should be among the tombstones of our ancestors,
commanded Duke Garen.
Bring me back the Avatar's body. Dispose of the others as you see fit.
Yes, my lord,
replied Anise. She pressed a button on the hilt of her double-bladed sword and twisted both halves of the hilt in opposite directions. The double-bladed sword separated into 2 single-bladed ones, which Anise placed in the toothed sheaths on her back. She bowed, turned around, and exited the room. No one noticed the flames which momentarily danced in her eyes. As Anise exited the room, she found her second-in-command, Lareth, waiting for her.
Assemble the Black Scorpion, Crimson Cobra, and Yellow Centipede squads,
said Anise.
Our master has given us a mission, and we must depart for the Valley of Fallen Heroes immediately.
Who's the target?
Asked Lareth.
Hopefully more of a challenge than the last one.
It's the new Avatar and his companions,
replied Anise. Lareth smiled.
Worthy foes indeed. Mistress Vala would have been proud to see what a fine job you've done as the leader of the Tekkari Sisterhood of Assassin these past 7 years,
she said, before turning around and hurrying down the staircase to the barracks. Anise followed shortly thereafter. Meanwhile, back in the chamber, Duke Garen waved his hand to dismiss Marek and turned back to observe the Avatar and his companions in the scrying pool.
And Marek, if I ever catch you looking at Annies like that ever again, I will make sure that you suffer horribly before I kill you,
said Duke Garen.
Annies is mine, and mine alone. Is that clear?
Duke Garen's eyes suddenly glowed bright red, and Marek suddenly was flung backward across the room. He hit the wall hard and crumpled to the floor.
Yes, my lord,
groaned Marek as he slowly got up and hobbled out of the room, grimacing in pain. Once Marek had departed, Duke Garen turned his attention back to the scrying pool. But suddenly the image of the Avatar and his companions faded away, as 2 large, glowing red eyes appeared in the now pitch-black water. A disembodied voice spoke to Duke Garen.
Do not underestimate the new Avatar. He may be untested, but I sense great power within him. He would not have been able to defeat my former servant Argax, were it not so,
said the voice.
I know, but even if Annies and her assassins failed to kill the Avatar, they will be greatly slowed down his process in obtaining the fragments of the Amulet of Azure,
replied Duke Garen.
Without Nystal to guide him, the new Avatar will not know what to do.
Indeed,
said the voice.
I have good news to report. Our support of the Home Guard has reaped enormous rewards. Marius has convinced a significant portion of the population that the Offworlders are invaders who pose a serious threat to our way of life. Many avatars are now being killed on sight by Home Guard members as soon as they emerge from the lunar rifts. Even if Annie's and her assassins fail, the new avatar yet may be killed by the loyal Home Guard members or sympathizers,
said Duke Garen.
There is also growing dissension in Great Council over Lord British's latest reforms. Lord British has reduced the tax rate on the commoners while increasing the tax rate on the nobility. He's been using the excess money to fund programs that benefit the commoners, increase food distribution to the poor, and construction of affordable housing and schools. He has also tried to reduce the power of the nobility by forcing them to contribute 25% of their personal troops to the royal army. The most vocal opponents of the reforms, the Dukes Gramont, Heron, and Jobin, have already joined our cause. With their support, we now have over 400,000 troops in New Britannia at our disposal.
Excellent,
replied the voice.
That, combined with the 600,000 troops that I have assembled in this realm, should be more than enough to defeat the troops loyal to Lord British. You have done well, my son. Lord British is a fool. He should have been paying more attention to what the nobility wanted, instead of trying to help the common people. Soon, I shall finally return to New Britannia and reclaim the throne from my weak and pathetic brother.
Lord Shadowrain's maniacal laugh echoed throughout the chamber. Duke Garen failed to notice the listening device attached to the skylight above the chamber. The young woman crouching on the roof pushed a button on her headset, and the device retracted itself. She turned her head, and it was apparent that she was the woman from Theodric's vision. The athletic, attractive, young, red-haired woman was clad in black leather armor with 2 swords strapped to her back.
Valley of Fallen Heroes. It looks like Nystal and the Avatar will need my help. Time to repay my debt to you, Nystal,
said Amber Raine. Amber turned and walked over to the edge of the balcony. She pulled out her grappling gun and fired a grappling hook line down to a tree located below. After tying the other end of the line to a chimney, she pulled out a leather strap and slung it over the line. After waiting for the guards down below to pass by on their patrol route, she slid down the line, landing behind the tree. Amber knew that her pet wolf, Moritura, and her black horse, Inferno, stood waiting for her behind the nearby hill. One of the guards sensed something was wrong and circled back to investigate the area near the tree. As he passed by the tree, Amber emerged behind him and choked him until he fell to the ground unconscious. Propping his unconscious body up behind the tree, Amber quickly scanned the area for other guards. Seeing none, she made her way over the hill, then mounted her horse. As she, Inferno, and Moritura rode off, the explosives which she had planted in the castle's weapons storage shed began to detonate. Chaos erupted, as the sharp weapons stored there became deadly projectiles, impaling many of the soldiers scrambling to put out the fires. Back in Giral, 2 burly men dragged a blindfolded Mingo into the warehouse and shoved him into a chair. Mingo's hands were bound with enchanted, hand-forged iron shackles, which prevented him from using magic or his innate abilities. One of the men removed his blindfold. A mysterious, black, hooded figure entered the room. The 2 burly German men turned and left. As soon as Mingo heard the man's voice, his eyes grew wide, and he began sweating profusely.
"No, it can't be. The Nightmare Man,"
whispered Mingo. The tall albino man removed his hood and smiled.
I see you remember me from our last encounter, Mingo,
he said.
Your cousin Nystal isn't around to rescue you this time. Tell me where he is.
"No, I will never betray my cousin,"
replied a defiant Mingo.
We'll see about that. Ha 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 ha,
laughed the tall albino man as his eyes began to glow. Mingo started singing,
I'm a little teapot, short and stout,
and prayed that the tall albino man wouldn't cause too much damage to his mind this time. Lord British and Fire Lotus were having afternoon tea on the balcony of the castle when they both spotted the flash of light from nearby Falura Field.
That flash of light,
said Fire Lotus.
I wonder what it means.
It means that the new avatar has been revealed,
replied Lord British.
It seems Nystal was right after all.
This is good news, my liege, because the next lunar eclipse is due to occur in 6 months,
said Fire Lotus.
I hope that the new avatar will be ready by then.
Me too,
replied Lord British.
The fate of New Britannia lies in the avatar's hands.
Well, I must be returning to my tavern to prepare for the evening crowd. Thank you for the afternoon tea, my liege,
said Fire Lotus.
My pleasure. You know how much I enjoy our daily conversations,
replied Lord British.
The castle seems so empty while Lady Arabella is away visiting her relatives in Geral. I've been so busy these days that I haven't had a chance to catch up with any of our other old friends.
Then you really must stop by the tavern this evening. David will be making a rare appearance and performing some of his new songs,
said Fire Lotus.
I will definitely be stopping by the tavern tonight. It will give David and I a chance to reminisce about the good old days, catch up on current events, and honor those who are no longer with us. It also gives me a reason to sample some of this new Fire Mountain Ale I've heard so much about. Is it really as good as they say?
Asked Lord British.
Indeed it is, my liege. Demand has been so high I've had trouble keeping it in stock. That my next shipment of Fire Mountain Ale isn't due to arrive until the middle of next week. But don't worry, I do still have a bit of it left in my private stock, for both of you to sample,
replied Fire Lotus.
Excellent,
said Lord British.
I look forward to it.
Fire Lotus departed. As soon as she left, Lord British went to the library room. He searched one of the bookcases for the Book of Aramis. After making certain that no one else was around, he pulled on the book, and a hidden doorway was revealed. He walked down the stairs to a secret laboratory filled with strange equipment powered by Tesla generators. He walked over to the vertical healing pod and peered through the translucent case where the real Lord British stood in suspended animation. The imposter looked at the computer readout next to the pod. It said, Healing cycle 99% complete. Time remaining 179 days, 23 hours, 55 minutes, 30 seconds.
Rest well, my son. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when you were growing up, but I'm here for you now. You've accomplished far more in your lifetime than any of my other children. I'm so proud of you. Your people will have need of you again soon. I will continue to watch over them until you are ready to return to us,
said the imposter, as he began changing into his true form, that of Barak of the old gods. Several hours later, Mingo finally lost consciousness. The tall albino man was physically exhausted from his attempt to penetrate Mingo's mental defences. The two burly German men returned. Hans, the taller of the two, spoke.
Master, were you able to extract any information from him?
He asked.
Yes, although his mental defenses have gotten much stronger since our last encounter,
replied a very exhausted tall albino man.
At first he tried to confuse me with some nonsense about a lizard named Kriskar, some adventurers named Jeb, Ed, Lyra, Shania, armored squirrels, talking penguins, and some red hat and blue hat gnomes.
Gnomes?
Said the shorter one, Gunther.
Didn't they all die out long ago? No one really knows for sure, little brother,
replied Hans.
But it's been ages since one has been sighted.
Gunther then made the mistake of saying,
It was good to see your sister Wester again, Master. She's so hot.
The tall albino man became very angry, and his eyes began glowing again.
Do not talk about my precious Vastra like that,
he shouted, as Gunther suddenly began having trouble breathing. As Gunther began gasping for air, his brother Hans said,
Please, forgive my brother, Master. He is still young and often speaks without thinking. I am sure he meant no disrespect. Isn't that right, Gunther?
Gunther nodded, as his face began to turn blue.
Very well, I will forgive you this time, Gunther,
said the tall albino man, as his eyes stopped glowing, and the colour began to return to Gunther's face.
But if you ever speak of Vastra like that again, you will die. Do you understand?
Yes, Master,
stammered Gunther.
Thank you for sparing my life.
Take Mingo and teleport back to Owl's Head. Dump him at Fire Lotus Tavern and then return here,
said the tall albino man.
We will intercept Nystal and his companions in the Magassa forest.
At once, Master,
said Hans and Gunther. Hans and Gunther picked up the unconscious Mingo and carried him away. Later that same evening, Duke Garin entered a secret chamber underneath his castle, bearing a bloody sacrificial dagger and a black bowl adorned with demonic images. A well-preserved skeleton lay on a stone slab in the centre of the chamber. Duke Garin placed the dagger on the corner of the slab. As the clock struck midnight, Duke Garin poured fresh, virgin female blood from the bowl on the bones and cast an ancient, forbidden, dark magic spell. Red smoke formed around the corpse, and muscles, veins, and skin quickly began to grow on the bones. When the resurrection process was complete, the bald man opened his eyes and sat up. Duke Garin handed the man a black robe to wear.
How long have I been dead?
Inquired the man.
A very long time. Hundreds of years,
replied Duke Garin.
Why did you bring me back?
Asked the man.
I have need of a highly competent general to command my troops in my upcoming war with Lord British,
replied Duke Garin.
Would you be interested in the job?
Yes, very much so. I must pay back my old friend for killing me in that magic duel,
said the man.
Revenge shall be mine.
Excellent. Welcome back, Lord Blackstorm,
said Duke Garin with an evil grin on his face.
No, Lord Blackstorm is dead,
said the man.
From now on, call me Lord DarkStarr.
The Avatar Chronicles 1 Return of the Avatar Episode 4 Chapter 3 A Beginning and an End. The Haradan Forest. That same evening. Having spent the rest of the day traversing Falura Field, our band of heroes decided to set up camp for the night in the Haradan Forest. It was a clear and starry night. Gabriel, Carlin, Nystal, and Theodric sat around a roaring fire as they washed down the last of their evening meal with mugs of Fire Mountain Ale.
Nystal, that was the finest seafood dinner I've had in a long time,
remarked Gabriel.
I never would have guessed that you'd be such a fine cook.
One of my many skills I picked up in my travels, Avatar,
replied Nystal.
Broiled fish, sourdough biscuits, and corn on the cob slathered in creamy butter. That brings back some fond childhood memories. My father used to cook that exact same meal for me when we spent the day fishing at our summer cabin up in Lake George, New York,
said Gabriel.
You will find that many of the foods you enjoyed on Earth are available here in New Britannia as well,
remarked Nystal.
Lord British and those who preceded you brought seeds and knowledge of growing crops with them from Earth. Surprisingly enough, these crops have thrived in New Britannia's acidic soil.
Master Nystal, I did not realize that colorful fish we had for dinner,
said Theodric.
It has a surprisingly sweet flavor to it, and I feel more energized.
Ah, my boy, that's because it's magic glowfish,
answered Nystal.
Rarely ever seen, it provides a substantial boost to one's health and mana when properly prepared and consumed. Improper preparation prior to consumption results in violent convulsions and death.
What?
Cried Gabriel, Carlin, and Theodric as they all suddenly stood up,
Don't worry, boys. I've been doing this for years. You're in no danger,
assured Nystal. A relieved Gabriel, Carlin, and Theodric sat down.
Nystal, what can you tell me about the Dragon Lords?
Asked Gabriel.
Interested in learning about your heritage, Avatar?
Replied Nystal.
I believe Theodric would be better suited to tell you the tale.
Theodric nodded and began recounting the story of Christopher and Kuroseth, as outlined in the Book of Aramis. 200 years ago, Christopher Dane paused for a moment on the rocky mountainside to catch his breath. His backpack was beginning to wear heavily on him. It was high noon on a warm summer day, and he had spent the last hour searching the area for the rare hecamum plant, a key ingredient in the powerful healing potion he was developing. He found it hard to believe that it had been 3 years since he had moved to the nearby village of Draven with his lovely wife Catherine and his young son Michael, and set up shop as a village healer. A former member of Lord British's elite Valsen Guard, he had witnessed the horrors of war, and when his term of service was over, he was eager to leave that life behind him. His choice for his new career would have greatly disappointed his late father, the great General Marcus Dane, hero of the Drakata Wars, for their family had a long tradition of distinguished military service, stretching back 500 years to the days of old Britannia. But Christopher had been fascinated by the medicinal properties of plants since he was a child, and he knew this was his calling. The village of Draven, situated near the base of Mount Helath, was a farming community, well known for its wheat and corn. A primary food supplier to the Royal Army, its citizens eagerly awaited the monthly army supply caravan from the capital, Brittany. Draven was quiet and peaceful, and full of friendly people, an ideal place to raise a family. But all that changed a week ago, when farmers noticed their livestock started disappearing, and their fields were set afire late at night. No one dared to venture out at night to investigate. All they could hear was the flapping of wings and loud roaring. The village elders speculated it was the work of the legendary black dragon Kuroseth, who was said to dwell in a cave deep beneath Mount Helath. A rider had been dispatched to Brittany to seek the aid of Lord British, but the rider's charred remains were found early the next day on the eastern bank of the nearby Serpent River. The villagers grew fearful. All hope seemed lost. 3 nights ago, a band of mercenaries known as the Red Wolves entered the Golden Falcon Tavern and offered their services to the village elders at a reasonable price, of course. Their leader, Corwin Longwood, was a former commander in Lord British's Royal Army. He assured the village elders that he and his men had the skills and firepower necessary to take down the legendary Black Dragon, Kuroseth. The Red Wolves had ventured forth towards Mount Helath over a day ago, and had not been heard from since. Christopher knew the risk he was taking by being here, but he knew that it was well worth it. He had already gathered all of the other components needed to concoct the healing potion. The hecamum was the final ingredient. If Christopher was right, this new formulation would be 10 times more potent than anything currently available. It could save many lives. Christopher shouted with delight as he spotted a small yellow and purple hecamum plant growing out of a mountain crevice. He carefully plucked 3 of the flowers and placed them in his belt pouch. Suddenly, Christopher sensed that someone was in great pain, one of the several empathic abilities which he had inherited from his mother, and heard an elderly male voice in his mind beg him,
"Please help me."
The voice guided him across the mountainside, and when Christopher rounded a corner, he was surprised to see the legendary black dragon Kuroseth lying on his back, with a huge gaping wound in his chest. Green pus oozed from the wound, a clear indication that he had been poisoned. Kuroseth's breathing was laboured and shallow, The charred remains of Corwin Longwood and his band of mercenaries lay in front of him.
I know how this appears, but the truth is, I was forced to slay these mercenaries in self-defense,
said Kuroseth.
They attacked me without warning as I was flying back to my lair. I am not the creature who has been terrorizing your village.
I know,
replied Christopher.
I sense the good within you. You appear to be critically wounded. How can I be of assistance?
The poisoned weapons which the mercenaries used prevent me from using my magic to heal myself,
said Kuroseth.
Are you a mage by any chance?
No, I'm only a humble village healer,
answered Christopher.
But I will try my best to aid you.
Christopher sat down next to Kuroseth and removed his backpack. He opened it and took out a mortar and pestle. From his various belt pouches he removed the individual ingredients and began combining them together. After half an hour, the healing potion was ready. He poured the bitter concoction down Kuroseth's throat and waited. After 2 hours, Christopher fell asleep. When Christopher awoke, the sun was beginning to set. He was astonished to see Kuroseth sitting upright, fully healed, and staring right at him.
I owe you my life, Christopher Dane,
said Kuroseth.
From this moment on, I am bound to your bloodline for the rest of my days.
That really is not necessary, mighty Kuroseth,
replied Christopher.
I was merely fulfilling my duties as a healer.
No, I believe all this was meant to be,
answered Kuroseth.
Now that I am fully healed and have access to my prophetic powers, I can see now that you have a great destiny before you. Behold,
said Kuroseth as he gestured with his claws and uttered an incantation. Suddenly, Christopher found himself clad in black plate armour at the head of a long rectangular table in the main council chamber of Castle Jannar. 8 other armour-clad knights, 5 male and 3 female, were seated at the table, staring right at him. So, Grandmaster, what do you think is our best course of action? Asked a young blue armoured knight seated to his right.
Pardon me?
Asked Christopher.
King Oswin's invading army is approaching from the east,
said Jero Orasi.
General Cowding's army has just departed from Brittany, but won't reach the border town of Arden for another 3 days. Thousands will be slaughtered.
No, we will buy General Keldane's army time to reach Arden by intercepting King Oswin's army here at Blood Canyon,
Christopher heard himself saying as he pointed to a spot on the map stretched out on the table.
If we depart now, we should arrive there in about 8 hours,
said Christopher.
If we split our force in half and attack from both the northern and the southern ends of the narrow, high-walled canyon, we should be able to trap King Oswin's troops. I will lead the northern squad consisting of myself, Jester, Plimico, Marisol, and Duncan. Jero will lead the southern squad consisting of himself, Senga, Connor, and Siobhan.
A brilliant strategy, Grandmaster,
said the beautiful young red-haired, green-eyed, white armour-clad Dragon Lord Siobhan, who gazed at Christopher longingly. All of the Dragon Lords stood up and raised their swords.
Whenever we are needed, the Dragon Lords stand ready to defend you, Britannia. Long may Lord British reign!
They shouted. The Dragon Lords rushed out to the rooftop, where their mounts, the 9 legendary dragons, were waiting for them. As Christopher approached Kuroseth, he noticed that the old black dragon was smiling at him.
What's so amusing, old friend?
Asked Christopher.
Time for you to return,
said Kuroseth, as he gestured with his claws and uttered an incantation.
What was that?
Said Christopher, as he found himself back on Mount Helot, standing next to Kuroseth.
That was your future,
answered Kuroseth.
From this moment on, you are Christopher Nightshadow, the first Dragon Lord. You are destined to lead the 9 Dragon Lords in their defense of New Britannia, as Lord British commands.
But I am no longer a man of war,
said Christopher.
I only seek to ease people's suffering.
You cannot escape your destiny, Lord Nightshadow,
replied Kuroseth.
Failure to take up arms will result in this.
This time, Christopher found himself standing in the middle of his village late at night. Houses were burning as a kobold army swept through. He saw his wife struggling with a lecherous kobold. She stabbed him in the shoulder with a long kitchen knife. The kobold roared in pain and snapped her neck. Her lifeless body fell to the ground. His son cried out, but he was dragged away by another kobold and thrown in a caged wagon with other children. The kobold eyed the children hungrily before he drove the wagon away. The dead bodies of Christopher's close friends and neighbours were strewn all about. It was a horrible sight, and Christopher closed his eyes. When Christopher reopened them, everything was back to normal.
You can only prevent that from happening by embracing your destiny, said
Kuroseth.
What must I do?
Asked a shaken Christopher.
Put on this enchanted black plate armour and this dragon katana,
commanded Kuroseth, pointing to where they lay nearby. When Christopher had done so, he asked Kuroseth,
What next?
Now we find out who has really been terrorising your village,
said Kuroseth.
Where did they find the rider's body?
On the east bank of the Serpent River, replied Christopher.
Then let us investigate. Put this saddle on my neck and climb aboard,
said Kuroseth.
Wait a minute,
interrupted Gabriel.
You're not telling me that this armor and sword once belonged to my grandfather?
Yes, that is indeed the same suit of armor worn by your grandfather 200 years ago,
answered Nystal.
The original dragon katana was destroyed in a battle long ago. The Sword of Virtue has merely reshaped itself in its image because that is what you subconsciously desired, Avatar.
The adventurers listened intently as the tale continued. As Christopher and Kuroseth flew over the Serpent River, the water started bubbling, and a giant, winged, red demon emerged from its depths and soared up into the sky. The demon paused in mid-air and began hurling red fireballs at Christopher and Kuroseth. Kuroseth deftly avoided the fireballs and charged straight at the demon, breathing black fireballs. The demon dodged the black fireballs and returned fire. Kuroseth zigzagged to avoid the demon's fireballs and said to Christopher,
When we get close to the demon, jump onto its neck and stab him in the brain with your sword. It's his only weak spot.
And what happens when he begins to fall?
Asked Christopher.
Don't worry, I'll circle back around to catch you when you jump off him,
replied Kuroseth.
Okay,
said a wary Christopher. Kuroseth flew close to the demon, who suddenly summoned a massive, flaming sword and began swinging it at Kuroseth. Kuroseth dodged the sword attacks and then yelled,
Now!
Christopher leapt onto the demon's neck and drew his dragon katana. Plunging it deep into the demon's skull, he pulled it straight down his neck and spinal column. The demon roared out in pain. Christopher quickly sheathed his dragon katana as the demon's eyes turned white and its lifeless form began falling. Christopher jumped and fell a short distance before landing right in the saddle as Kuroseth swooped in to catch him. The demon's body crashed into the river with a loud boom as the cheering villagers, who had heard all of the loud noise and come out of their homes to observe the entire battle in the sky, greeted Christopher and Kuroseth as they landed nearby. Christopher explained to the villagers that the demon was the true culprit, and Kuroseth was a friend. Christopher's wife, Catherine, and his 5-year-old son, Michael, came running. Christopher hugged them both. Michael walked over to Kuroseth and patted him on the nose. Kuroseth smiled. Meanwhile, on a nearby hilltop, 2 figures observed the people below, unnoticed. The young dark-haired man in red and black armour knelt before his master and spoke.
Master, forgive me,
said Lord Shadow Raine.
Your plan has failed due to my incompetence. I await your judgment.
Rise, Lord Shadow Raine,
commanded the black-cloaked figure.
This was merely a test of your abilities. You have done well. Only a skilled practitioner of the dark arts would have been able to free such a powerful demon lord from his underworld prison and compel him to terrorize this village. The demon's attacks on the other 2 farming villages, Gun and Holcroft, were quite successful.
This dragon lord must be dealt with right away, before he becomes a bigger threat to your plans,
urged Lord Shadow Raine.
Should I take care of him personally?
No, Lord Shadow Raine,
replied his master.
You must learn the importance of patience. Those who rush into battle are doomed to fail. Powerful you may be, but much you still have to learn, my young apprentice. If this dragon lord becomes a greater threat in the future, rest assured that he will be dealt with.
Yes, Master Shulnir,
said Lord Shadow Raine. The cloaked figure uttered an incantation, and both figures vanished in a cloud of black smoke.
So, Lord Shadow Raine was indirectly responsible for the rise of the Dragon Lords?
Asked Gabriel.
Yes,
answered Nystal.
But he was also the one responsible for their destruction and your father's exile to Earth 50 years ago. But that's a tale for another evening. Now it's time for us to clean up and get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. We will pass through the Vale of Fallen Heroes, the halfway point to the fortress of the Cobalt King, Ugrod, in the northwest Novia, where the first fragment of the Amulet of Vezur lies.
Nystal, I do have a question,
asked Gabriel.
Whatever happened to my grandmother? Does she still live?
Nystal smiled.
Your grandmother still lives, Gabriel,
replied Nystal.
Would you like to meet her?
Yes, very much so,
said Gabriel.
Does she live far from here?
No. As a matter of fact, she lives very close by,
answered Nystal.
I will take you to her.
Carlin and I will clean up the camp and get some sleep,
said Theodric.
See you both in the morning.
Nystal led Gabriel down a narrow path through the woods to a small stone cottage in a clearing. A cloud of smoke rose from the chimney, and a lamp shone through one of the windows. There was a small vegetable garden located on the right-hand side of the cottage. Well-manicured shrubs lined the stone walk path leading up to the front door. Nystal and Gabriel passed through the nearly invisible dome-shaped mystical force field surrounding the area around the cottage. Nystal explained to Gabriel that he had erected the force field when his grandmother had moved into the cottage following the death of his grandfather. Nystal noted that only good beings with honourable intentions could pass through the impenetrable force field. Nystal knocked on the wooden door.
Who is it?
Asked a female voice.
It's Nystal. Catherine, I have someone I want you to meet,
said Nystal.
At this late hour?
Answered Catherine.
Oh, all right.
The door opened, and there stood a blonde-haired woman who appeared to be about 60 Earth years old.
Catherine, this is your grandson, Gabriel,
said Nystal. Tears welled up in Catherine's eyes as she rushed forward to embrace Gabriel.
Oh, I never thought I'd live long enough to meet you,
said Catherine as she stood back and examined Gabriel.
Oh, you look so much like your father Michael at the same age. Oh, come in. I'll fix us some nice herbal tea. We have so much to talk about.
Gabriel asked.
Nystal, you won't be joining us?
No, Gabriel. This is between you and your grandmother,
replied Nystal.
I trust you can find your way back to camp.
Yes,
replied Gabriel.
I cannot thank you enough for uniting me with my grandmother. See you in the morning.
Nystal smiled, then turned and departed. As Gabriel entered his grandmother's cottage, he realized how lost he had felt ever since his wife Shannon died 3 years ago. But now he had something worth fighting for. something worth living for. Gabriel Nightshadow had finally found his way home. 4 hours later, Nystal heard a noise and woke up. He was startled to see Theodric and Carlin bound and gagged, with 2 burly German guys standing guard over them.
Don't try anything or we will kill your friends,
said Hans, pointing his sword at Theodric's throat.
What's the matter? Are you a scared little boy?
Theodric appeared to be very nervous and was sweating profusely. Hans laughed in Theodric's face.
A slow and painful death, to be sure,
said Gunther, who was throwing knives around Carlin's head. Carlin glared at Gunther and appeared to be cursing him, but the gag muffled his voice, and it was hard to tell exactly what he was saying.
Yeah, we mean business,
said Hans.
We are the Arenstorff brothers, and we are 2 wild and dangerous guys.
Ah, you finally woke up,
said a very familiar voice. Nystal turned around to see the tall albino man standing there, with a 10-year-old version of his beloved Charia in front of him. He had his hands on her shoulders, and she seemed very scared. The adult Charia realized that the little girl was her when she was a child, and whispered to Nystal, "How is this possible?"
Parallel worlds, my dear,
Nystal whispered.
There's a version of you on each one of them.
Such a pretty little girl,
said the tall albino man, stroking young Charia's cheek with his right hand.
No doubt she will grow up to be a beautiful woman. I can see why she caught your eye.
Let the girl go,
shouted Nystal.
This doesn't concern her. This is between you and me.
Of course this concerns her,
said the tall albino man, with a wicked smile on his face.
She's the only one you love, no matter what form she's in.
I don't understand,
said young Charia.
I'm scared. I wish Amber was here.
As if on cue, Gunther suddenly fell to the ground dead, his throat slit by Amber Raine, who had snuck up behind him. Hans was tackled from behind by Moritura, who then proceeded to rip his throat out.
What's this?
Shouted the tall albino man.
Let the girl go,
yelled Amber, as she dropped her dagger and pulled out her twin swords.
Not so fast,
said the tall albino man, as he pushed young Charia to one side and surrounded her with an energy bubble.
One step closer and I will remove all the air from the bubble and young Charia will suffocate to death.
Nystal waved Amber off with his left hand and said,
Stay back, Amber. Tend to Carlin and Theodric. I'll deal with our foe here.
Turning to the tall albino man, Nystal said,
Time for us to settle this once and for all, on the astral plane.
Agreed,
said the tall albino man.
A mental battle to the death.
Nystal nodded in agreement.
Since you're the one who challenged me, I get to select our battlefield,
said Nystal.
Very well, Nystal,
replied the tall albino man.
What shall it be?
Why, feudal Japan, of course,
said a smiling Nystal.
See you there.
Death is coming for you, Nystal,
shouted the tall albino man. To the others gathered, it appeared as if both Nystal and the tall albino man had suddenly become frozen in time. But on the astral plane, the battle was about to begin. Nystal and the tall albino man found themselves standing in a courtyard of a feudal Japanese estate. It was high noon, and all was silent. Both Nystal and the tall albino man were clad in samurai armour. Nystal's armour was gold in colour, while the tall albino man's armour was black. Nystal found himself full of energy, for in this realm he was young Time Lord once again, and he wielded the gold dragon katana. The tall albino man was wielding a giant red basento, a spear-like weapon with a blade at the end that resembles a scimitar. The two men started circling each other.
I understand that you trained under the great Miyamoto Musashi himself,
said the tall albino man.
Most impressive. Too bad for you I trained under Hattori Hanzo.
The tall albino man attacked first, and drew first blood as his Bacento grazed Nystal's side. The longer reach of the Bacento was a real problem, Nystal thought to himself. If I'm not careful, I'm a dead man. Nystal drew blood next as he avoided the tall albino man's thrust and sliced his right shoulder.
Good. Very good,
said the tall albino man.
Let's make this more interesting.
The tall albino man gestured, and suddenly an hourglass appeared in midair.
This hourglass actually runs out in 5 minutes. That's how long you have to kill me before young Shariah runs out of air and suffocates to death,
said the tall albino man with an evil smile.
Are you up to the task?
Damn you,
yelled an angry Nystal as he charged at the tall albino man. The tall albino man deflected Nystal's blow with his Bacento and laughed.
Yes, give in to your anger,
said the tall albino man.
For that is the true source of one's strength.
Back in the real world, Amber, Raine, Carlin, and Theodric suddenly saw a 5-minute hourglass suspended in midair and could see that young Shariah was having trouble breathing.
We must penetrate the energy bubble before Shariah suffocates,
yelled Amber. Despite their best efforts, none of their weapons had any effect on the energy bubble, and they could only watch helplessly as young Shariah slowly suffocated. As the final minute began winding down, both Nystal and the tall albino man were badly wounded, and the dirt courtyard was covered in their blood. The two men were breathing heavily. The tall albino man lunged at Nystal with his Bacento. Nystal closed his eyes, cleared his mind, and then thrust his katana. Both Nystal and the tall albino man dealt each other a fatal blow. Nystal's blade pierced the tall albino man's heart, while the tall albino man's Bacento impaled Nystal through his stomach. Both of the men fell backward.
You're too late, Nystal,
laughed the tall albino man.
Time has run out. Your sacrifice was for nothing. I win. I'll see you in hell.
Then the tall albino man died, his eyes staring straight upward.
No,
said Nystal as he lost consciousness. In the real world, Amber, Carlin, and Theodric were unable to revive Shariah. After the energy bubble collapsed, Carlin checked her pulse.
I'm afraid she's dead, Amber,
he said. Amber started crying.
I failed her,
Amber sobbed. Theodric suddenly cried out as he noticed Nystal's body beginning to glow. Gabriel suddenly appeared out of nowhere.
Amber, grab the Radazane mind cube from Nystal's pouch,
he said. Amber ran over and grabbed the cube.
What do I do with it?
She asked.
When I give you the signal, place it on young Shariah's forehead,
said Gabriel, as he took hold of young Shariah's lifeless hand, and his green eyes suddenly turned bright white. Suddenly, both Gabriel and young Shariah were surrounded by a white glow.
Now,
said Gabriel, as he concentrated on reviving young Shariah. Amber placed the Radazane mind cube on young Shariah's forehead and held it in place. The white glow surrounding Gabriel and young Shariah grew in intensity, while Nystal's form, which was now completely obscured by a yellow glow, started shrinking. After several minutes, Gabriel let go of young Shariah's hand and collapsed from exhaustion. His eyes returned to their normal emerald green colour. The Radazane mind cube was now pitch black and lifeless.
Did it work?
Gabriel asked, as he breathed heavily. Young Shariah opened her eyes.
I'm alive?
Asked Shariah, as she felt her face.
After 200 years, I finally have a body again.
Yes, my love, and so have I,
said a young male voice from behind them. Everyone turned around to see a bald, 10-year-old version of Time Lord standing there. Turning to Gabriel, young Time Lord asked,
How did you know?
Gabriel pulled out a paperback copy of the last novel in his Time Lord series, Death of a Time Lord, out of his pouch.
Because that's exactly how it happened in the dream I had when I was writing the ending to this book 9 years ago. Strange, though. I never would have guessed that those dreams would turn out to be visions of the future,
replied Gabriel. Amber looked very sad.
Nystal, Sharia, I'm happy for the both of you. But does this mean that the young Sharia I grew to care for is truly gone forever?
Asked Amber.
Amber, I'm so sorry,
said young Time Lord.
Don't be sad, Amber. Young Sharia's soul will eventually be reborn into a new body, and you will see her again one day,
said a smiling Gabriel.
How do you know that?
Asked Amber.
Here, let me show you another vision I had of the future,
said Gabriel, as he touched the tip of his finger to Amber's forehead. Suddenly, Amber found herself at some point in the future. She was standing in a large church. Her pet wolf, Mori Tura, was standing by her side. She no longer wore armor or carried weapons, for she was now the High Priestess of the Church of Chaos. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her chaos spoon. A handsome, bearded man, clad in a white silk robe with blue trim covered in strange golden runes, walked over and gave her a hug. Amber instantly knew that he was her husband, the noted historian, Theodric. She heard a familiar voice call out, "Mommy," and saw young Sharia come running over to hug her as well. All was well, and Amber was very happy. Then, everything turned bright white, and she found herself back in the present.
Oh, was that really my future?
Asked Amber.
It is if you continue on your current path,
said Gabriel. A nervous Theodric walked over and introduced himself to Amber. Amber was stunned to hear about the vision he had 4 years ago on Mount Crendor. Young Time Lord suddenly spoke up.
As happy as I am about how things turned out,
he said,
we have much work to do. We must recover the 9 fragments of the Amulet of Azure before Lord Shadowrain returns in 6 months with his invasion force. Who's with me?
Young Time Lord placed his hand out. Everyone else placed their hands on top of his. We're with you, Time Lord, everyone shouted. To save New Britannia. Long may Lord British reign. The beginning. Epilogue. A distant universe on the planet Naguriyama. Lightning pierced the dark night sky over the massive steel citadel. Thousands of armour-clad skeletons littered the rocky terrain outside. In the dimly lit throne room, a figure clad in black armour sat, deep in thought. Suddenly, a cyborg warrior, clad in high-tech samurai armour, entered and knelt before his master.
Sorry to disturb you, my lord, but it is urgent that I speak to you,
said the samurai.
What concerns you, General Ruko?
Asked the dark figure.
The men grow impatient, my lord. They are eager to invade New Britannia and put the renegade Nystal on trial for his crimes against the Jinrazi Empire, replied General Ruko.
I see,
said the dark figure.
Tell your men that they need to be patient just a little longer. With my aid, your people have been able to track down and eliminate most of the old gods and destroy their floating city of Gadara. Do not worry. The criminal Nystal isn't going anywhere. In 6 months, we will be able to pass through the Lunar Rift. Once we have defeated Lord British's forces, the Jinrazi will be able to settle on the eastern continent, and Nystal will be brought to justice. I promise you, the late Emperor Kuzai and the Jinrazi Empire will be avenged.
The Jinrazi thank you for saving us when our battle cruiser crashed on this planet long ago, Lord Shadowrain,
said General Ruko.
I will convey your message to the troops.
General Ruko rose, turned, and left the throne room. After General Ruko departed, Lord Shadowrain talked to himself.
Soon I will finally be rid of you, Nystal, and then nothing will stop me from reclaiming the throne from my weak and pathetic brother, Lord British. In the end, chaos will triumph over order!
Lord Shadowrain's eyes glowed bright red as he pounded his right fist down on the stone throne armrest, causing it to shatter into many pieces. Don't go away. There's more happening after the credits. Sir Stile Teckel presents The Avatar Chronicles 1, Return of the Avatar. Directed and produced by Lord Baldrith. Writer and music supervisor, Gabriel Nightshadow. Casting director and court jester, Time Lord. Assistant casting director and director of public relations, Amber Raine. Cast: Lord Baldrith as Nystal, Lord Baldrith, Mingo, and General Ruko. Asclepius as Lord DarkStarr, Red Badger, Kuroseth, Malgor the Mighty, Demon Lord Argax, Henry, Morgan, Brian, and Group. Joe Garrity as Gabriel Nightshadow. Amber Raine as young and adult Cheria and Amber Raine. Carlin Archer as Carlin. Static Grazer as Lord Shadowrain. Avatar Acid as Theodric. Dame Laurie as Jessica and Catherine. Cami as Sister Agnes and Lareth. Sir Cabarrus as Hands and Gunther. Lacrobat as Master Jonier, Sir Charles Campbell, Enemy Soldier, and Group. Chips 36 as Marek, Teenage Boy, and Group. Elizabeth as Dragon Lord Siobhan, Sarah, and Group. Thornrage as Dragon Lord Jero Orachi and Robert. Brian D. Taylor as Enemy Commander. David Peters as Guard Bob. Lord Trennick as the Tall Albino Man. Marjoria 70 as Vastra. Duke Gregor as Duke Garen and the original Avatar. Dwalin Brushberg as Christopher Nightshadow. Little Geek Lost as Fire Lotus. Sarge as Marius. Brian Manown as Samuel. Sir Stile Teckel as the Mayor of Ardoris. Indy Martin as Lanthurthal and Anise. Stephen J. Goldman as John. With Cypherismad as Lord British and Barak of the Old Gods. And starring Asclepius as the Great Story Weaver. Duke Garen's Castle. As Lord DarkStarr stood atop the castle wall next to Duke Garen, observing the troops training in the courtyard below, he suddenly had a vision. He was surrounded by mist. The mist dissipated, and Lord DarkStarr found himself sitting in the front row of a giant cathedral. The bright sun shone through the magnificent stained glass windows, which depicted the story of Lord DarkStarr's resurrection and rise to power. The church pews were fully packed, and many people were standing in the back. A beautiful red-headed elf wearing a black robe was standing at the pulpit preaching the word of chaos. Lord DarkStarr was mesmerized by the sound of her voice. When she finished her sermon, Lord DarkStarr found himself at the head of the long line of parishioners waiting to greet her. He walked up to her and said,
"That was a lovely sermon you gave today, High Priestess Amber Raine."
High Priestess Amber Raine replied,
Thank you, my lord. We all strive to follow the path you have set us on. I thought that you should know that many of my parishioners have praised your good work. Since you became ruler, New Britannia has enjoyed a new age of prosperity.
After giving Amber an amorous glance, Lord DarkStarr whispered in her ear,
"I trust that you'll be stopping by this evening for dinner at the usual time. We still have plenty of meat pie left."
I wouldn't miss it for the world, my lord,
replied High Priestess Amber Raine as she smiled. Everything suddenly faded into the mist, and Lord DarkStarr found himself back on the castle wall.
"Are you all right, Lord DarkStarr?"
asked Duke Garen.
You seem lost in thought for a few moments.
"I'm fine, Duke Garen,"
replied Lord DarkStarr.
"I just had a vision of the future."
"Oh, really?"
asked Duke Garen.
"A good one, I hope."
"Indeed it was,"
answered Lord DarkStarr as he smiled.
"Duke Garen, I need your help in locating someone for me. A red-headed female elf named Amber Raine.
Music credits. Soliloquy by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Viracocha's Demise by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. Rise of Spirit by Alexander Zelenov at https://soundcloud.com/Alexander Zelenov. A Winter Tale by Johann Brod at www.opengameart.org. World Travel by Dan Knoflicek at www.opengameart.org. Flights of Fancy by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. The Fall of Arcana, Epic Game Theme Music by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Hall of the Ancients by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. Last Minute by Horror Pen at www.opengameart.org. Medieval Theme 1 by Alexander Zelenov at https://soundcloud.com/Alexander Zelenov. Painted Dreams Mock-up by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. March of May by Athanasios, Only Kool-Aid, Basilu, My Canon Sing at www.opengameart.org. Beauty of Chaos by Grindhold and Grindhold.de at www.opengameart.org. Leanne by Illyria from the Illyrian Tales Volume 1 at www.opengameart.org. From Tome to Tome by Elliot Corley from Chaos is Harmony at www.opengameart.org. Asian Duet by Illyria at www.opengameart.org. Asian String Suite by Boss Level VGM at www.opengameart.org. Innocence by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. Maria's Theme by Jan Hanasuanto for Radakan at www.opengameart.org. Dark Amulet by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Path to Lakeland by Alexander Zelenov at https://soundcloud.com/Alexander Zelenov. Battle Theme A by Cynic Music at www.cynicmusic.com and www.pixelsphere.org. Invasion by Elliot Corley from Chaos is Harmony at www.opengameart.org. Medieval by Miguel Herrero at www.opengameart.org. Almost Out by Horror Pen at www.opengameart.org. Red Curtain by Horror Pen at www.opengameart.org. Enchanted Festival by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Ireland's Coast Game Edition Live Players by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Heroism by Edward J. Blakely at www.edwardblakely.com. Conquerors by Alexander Zelenov at https://soundcloud.com/Alexander Zelenov. Tower of Great Lords by Alexander Zelenov at https://soundcloud.com/Alexander Zelenov. Dream Raid Full Version Mockup by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. The King's Crowning by Teleron at www.opengameart.org. Radakan Old Crypt by Jan Hanasuanto for Radakan at www.opengameart.org. Covert Operations by Artistic Dude at www.opengameart.org. Winds of Stories by Horror Pen at www.opengameart.org. The Path Revealed by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. Melvin and Waldorf by Joe Reynolds, Professor Lamp at www.jrtheories.webs.com. Colossal Boss Battle Theme by Matthew Pablo from Blackmore OST at www.matthewpablo.com. El Bosque Encantado by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. Peaceful Village Loop by Illyria from the Illyrian Tales, Volume 1 at www.opengameart.org. Classical Medieval Song by Joe Reynolds, Professor Lamp at www.jrtheories.webs.com. The Last Encounter Original Version by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Assassin's Assault by Horrorpen at www.opengameart.org. Leap into Eternity Live Orchestra by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Dream by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. Heroes Theme by Alexander Zelenov at https://soundcloud.com/Alexander Zelenov. Theme of Com Mecha by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Beyond the Clouds Orchestral Theme by Matthew Pablo at www.matthewpablo.com. Omens by Elliot Corley at www.opengameart.org. The Port Town of Geral. Marius, the handsome young leader of the Home Guard, suddenly woke up in a cold sweat. Running over to the wash basin, he splashed cold water on his face and stared into the mirror. The face staring back at him was not his own. It was that of the tall albino man. Marius suddenly had a wicked smile on his face and began laughing.